Sup, everybody? This is Carrick with ACG, and I'm here with Johnny from Johnny Plays Live on YouTube and on Twitch for podcast number 518. Speaking of that, I saw you
Let's go.
streaming this weekend, right?
Yeah.
What'd you stream?
Yeah, I streamed a little bit of League and a little bit of Roadcraft as well. So we've been playing that. And it's been a bit of a slow burn, getting into the game. You have to learn so many things. And especially the times I had to play by myself, things do slow down quite a bit because you have to do all the tasks, right? But liking it.
Do you like the speed at which the quests and objectives are delivered, or do you also dislike that? Like, does it feel too disjointed, too slow?
No, I think I like it, and it is something I missed in SnowRunner, having a bit more of a guided thread to take you through the game and learning all the systems. So I like that part, and I think it works really well with the co-op. I just think that sometimes it's a bit overwhelming when they just throw a completely new thing at you and you have to figure out, oh, okay, I gotta, identify these color things, bring them to recycling, just to give an example. When the explanation is pretty much just one tooltip, and from that you have to infer what the entire workflow is. So it takes a little bit, but as you start to get better at these things, it does pay off. It's pretty rewarding. I just think that some of the things you have to do repeatedly early on are a bit tedious, like bringing sand because one of your routes is not working. And like you fix the route, and guess what? Next time it runs, now it stopped working because the AI vehicle now hit some other random.
Dude, that AI, that AI is, man, it's some
issues
of your best
with the
friends
routes
at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
AI. That shit loses its mind. It just starts looking off after I ate too much pizza. Yeah, the number of times I'd be driving around and something would pop up and it'd be like, your route has failed. And you're like, dude, seriously?
Yeah,
Again?
Absolutely. All the time. But when it's working, and especially when I was playing with a friend, it was awesome because you were, you're working a project. So you're saying, together. Okay, together. So you're saying, okay, you're good at that. So, focus on that. I'm going to do this other thing. And you're sort of problem solving. It's good.
Yeah, it's, did you get any micro stutter or anything? You and I talked about it privately while we were hanging out. I think.
So I've been lucky. I haven't had any stutter on my side. I've had some graphical glitches, like stuff popping in, some textures not loading properly or like taking a bit to load and stuff like that. And then some stuff that don't belong at all in the scene just kind of popping into existence like some kind of quantum, phenomena. But those were like just isolated things that happened. For the most part, it's been pretty good. I've been using frame generation as well.
Right.
And it's working really well.
Weirdly enough, this is one of the few games where if frame generation took a couple tries to get sort of working. I also think they definitely patched some stuff because my performance is a little worse than I was getting during the review period. But I felt that even if I was at a certain frame rate, there was something about it that I could occasionally see, but frame gen smoothed that out to the point to where I couldn't, but then wouldn't always work. It was an odd one. I was talking to Omar, who was playing, and he was having some difficulties too. But again, he didn't notice because what you and I talked about, you're looking at the back of a dump truck, the entire time. So you don't always check the phone somebody's using if they have a nice butt, which is pretty much that game, right? You're just constantly looking at the ass of some dump truck, and you're not really looking at the trees. I would notice when I would turn 3D and try to do something, dig something up, I'd be like, that looks juddery to me, but it was weird because I was watching he was using all kinds of sensing stuff. It was beyond Rivet Tuner, and it wasn't showing stutters. It's just something about it looks, I don't know, a little, just at times a little unclean. There's also so many things going on, and that's a new engine for this, or at least new physics and stuff. I really enjoyed it overall. I think that's exactly where they probably wanted to go with Expeditions and weren't able to go. And I want a new a new SnowRunner or MudRunner too, but they pretty much made it clear that it's like this is, at least for now, where they're going. So
yeah, And I think the physics adds a lot. The interaction with the fluids, well, like the sand and everything. That's a whole other layer that wasn't there in the first game. And the co-op is much more like well integrated because it saves your progress. So if someone plays with you, their progress is saved in their own world. And full crossplay. They already had that in SnowRunner, but yeah, the co-op just seems like much more cohesive this time.
Yeah, they did a good job with it. What else are you playing?
So it's been that, some League, and Doom. Been going through
what are your thoughts Doom on as well. Doom now after it's been a week and what has it been? 2 weeks since release? A week? 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on it?
I think I've played maybe 10 chapters.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know like how deep that is into the game, but it's deep enough that it started to have some more challenging encounters, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a bit unforgiving in the sense that if you die, right, and you can die very quickly, you have to redo like an entire area pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, but once you kind of start to get into the rhythm of things, it's been really, really satisfying. You kind of figure out that it's like the only way is forward. So if you're struggling, if you're about to die, actually that's when you have to get even more aggressive, look for kills, right? And like gap close into some other enemy. So it's been fun to get into that. I'm not the biggest FPS person myself, so I'm just playing in the recommended difficulty. I think it's called Ultra Violence.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a normal mode. And it's been a good balance. It was a bit on the easy side earlier on, but now that there are some like more open areas and stuff with a lot of enemies, it's been, I think, a good balance.
Though you haven't won it, where do you put it? Do you track the old ones? Like, do you put this above, or is that just like unfair since they're so long ago? Which is that's a fair thought process.
Well, no, actually, I played the 2016 Doom quite recently. I was playing it before the release of this one to refresh my memory.
Oh, okay.
And I like that one a lot, but I think this is just a much better game, actually. Well, I won't say much better because they're both great,
right?
Different games, but I find this one richer. I don't know. It feels like there's more in there interesting for me. I do like the flow and the purity in the 2016 one, but this one, I find that, being able to sprint, which you couldn't, right? In 2016, it was just, you were always at the same speed. So like you can switch your speed, you can gap close, and the jump for the gap close is insane, by the way. Like we talked about this. If you can see something on your screen, you can almost always, just tomahawk into that enemy and then go from there. So if you're feeling like you're about to die, one thing you can always usually do is like locate another easy enemy and then tomahawk into that enemy. You're going to get some health back and you're going to be able to get away from whatever was wrecking you. So maybe now, you're in an easier patch or whatever, regain some health and then go back in.
Yeah, that shit's stretchy as hell. I mean, opposite side of the map almost. And you just go after somebody. You're like, boom. I see that. Let's see. Plague Soul says Doom: The Dark Ages rules mindless fun in a good way. What's up, Craig? Ruggiero, Pentagon Forest, Do Blue. Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon released today. Oregon Fresh says Metaphor hitting Game Pass. We are going to talk about the Metaphor games because that's pretty. It's actually nuts what games they put on Game Pass. What's up, Robert? I almost called him Joe Raptor because I've been watching his video that he released. I almost called you Joe Raptor. Hey, it could be much worse getting called other things. Wicked Critter says feels weird sitting at my desk and watching. Well, that's probably because you're at work and you're not supposed to be. But hey, what's up, Lucitan? Roadkill says Dark Age is the best Doom ever. People got to get with it. You know what's interesting to me? So I don't track them too much unless we're going to talk about them. Doom 2016 is a sign of its times. 2016, like that's a long
it's in there.
Fucking time
yeah
ago.
It's in the name.
It's in the name. And Eternal, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense if we talk this way, but dude, they're just different styles of games. They're all Doom, but this one definitely changed more than Eternal did. I think Eternal changed the landscape a bit and has, some stuff that's there. But I think with this one, the idea of how they put it together is pretty nice. The only thing I haven't liked with this one is some of the discourse around, oh my God, this game runs smooth. Every game in the world needs to run on its engine. And then luckily the developers, just around the same time that weird conversation always starts, whenever a game slightly runs good, they were like, no, this game and this engine were made for each other. It's distinctly just for this. Like we did it just for this. Also, I like the game. I love the game. I think Doom Dark Ages is an absolute blast, but I do think that it's easy to ignore criticism because of credentials, which is what seems to occur many times with a game that has a series where they do hit multiple times, which this one did. But when you look at Doom Dark Ages, wide open spaces, sort of blah, level design, not necessarily the greatest, secret design, not necessarily the greatest, enemies just in places randomly that they're sort of just waiting for you. The reason why those are noticeable is because it's open world. If it was closed off world, you wouldn't notice that. I think it's really easy to sort of also get stuck in ignoring fun for criticism. Everybody wants to talk afterwards about it. And there's this sort of dichotomy that happens where it's either ignoring the don't like it, but somebody will say, oh, I like it because it's fun, and they don't want to talk at all. And then the other people, I like it, it's fun, and it's the greatest thing ever, and every engine needs to switch to this, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like,
yes.
There's probably a happy medium in there somewhere, especially for this title. But yeah, man,
I've been feeling a lot like my main criticism is actually around the sound. And you talked about this, that music? The music. Well, I'm gonna kind of group both in there because I think there's a bit of a mixing situation.
Yeah.
Yes, and I've been trying to dial it in. I don't know if it's just on my side, but I haven't really been able to identify sounds that well. It just feels like it's all kind of blending together. Okay. The music with like weapon sounds and stuff. Mm-hmm. And what I felt in prior Dooms was a bit more of like an impactful thing when you hit like a big shotgun, it blew up an enemy. It almost felt like the music was either reacting to that or allowing that to pop.
Right.
And at the same time, when the music itself popped, it was so noticeable, and you got this huge like dopamine thing. And there's something I haven't noticed the music in this game. There's something about it. I don't know if it just sits in the mix, like kind of in the background too much, but I just haven't had any moments where I'm, like.
Yeah, it's not that kind of music, man. It's a different style.
Doesn't groove that hard.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
I think with the sound, I had to turn the music down and maybe add a little punch on the EQ. I can't remember, but I do that with almost any game. I'll do it. I'll play it normal, but then after a while, my assumption is if the option's in there, I'm going to play with it because a person can play with it. They can't play with my DAC or my amp. So that's not fair. But when it comes to the normal setup, I'll mess around with the sliders. And I did have to mess around with sliders quite a bit to really get the sound to punch. But it was easy enough to do. But I would say the music is just not the same kind of music. It's I actually like some of the tracks, but they're almost better by themselves. They're just playing by themselves. They're not as reactive. And you do notice that when you're playing.
Yes.
If you've played the recent ones, you'll notice it more. If you're a big fan of like Mick Gordon, you'll notice it more. I'm a big fan of Mick Gordon's music in games, but I'm also a fan of whoever had to do this music. Like you do have to replace somebody. Somebody had to replace Gordon when he left. There's going to be that day where you're sitting there going, okay, I got to replace whomever this legend is. And they did an okay job. There's some tracks that I liked, but I don't feel that it's reactive. Too much. And I'm wondering if that's related to the game speed, Johnny, because if the game speed goes down to 50%, some of their grooves are pretty low and pretty slow anyway. They've got a couple vibe grooves where it's really low. Fucking guitar string sounds like it's almost gonna fall off the guitar and be like dum, 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 dum. And you're like, okay, what would that sound like at 50%? That would sound like trash. So I'm wondering if some of their stuff was just simply trying to use the tools and not able to make it adjust as you play because the game world speed can be adjusted, and that would have to be adjusted as well. As we found out with the audio, that's not what happens. The music or the voice, they fucking just go up and down. They don't alter accurately. So, just one of those things. But what weapon do you like the best? And please don't say it's a super shotgun, man. Come on.
No, the super shotgun is satisfying when you like blow up something melee range, but I don't find it very reliable because a lot of enemies do punish you when you get like full melee range, right? They have some area of effect attacks that are undodgeable. Like just to give an example, one guy has this green goo that he places on the ground around him. So if you're close, it doesn't matter how skilled you are at the game. Like you're gonna
be a rough one.
Get hit. It's gonna be a rough one.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of enemies, you're more prized for like an in and out style. And I find a lot of the other weapons more effective. So the shotguns I find good for like some mobs and stuff when you want to just kind of get in and clear them quickly. But for anything bigger, I've been liking the the one that crushes the skulls.
Yeah.
Because even for single targets, it's actually quite effective because if you get close enough, all the shots are going into that target. So it's kind of like a scatter shot, but works really well. And then the other one where I forget what the name is, where it's basically shooting really fast, and there's a mod where
instead of the mod that shoots slower and longer, it's the one
that's
like
you got it. And that one, right? There's a mod where like the target, once it's shot enough, it's glowing. You can throw the shield, do a bunch of damage, and that's been really effective. So that one I like a lot. I've been playing around with is it the grenade launcher or like the ball launcher?
You mean the launcher with the ball on the chain, or the grenade launcher that's also the RPG?
The loose ball, the cannonball or whatever. And that one is fun because you have to actually like in your head calculate the
distance and trajectory,
parabola, like the trajectory. So that one's satisfying when you land it because it can also bounce. So what I've done, like if sometimes you have like a hallway type thing, you can kind of like toss it in a way that's gonna blow up and do a bunch of AoE damage. So for some areas, that one feels super good.
Do you know what I do? I trail shot the fuck out of that gun. I'll go around if there's because I don't know about you, but usually when I can see a spot, I'll memorize just for a second. I'll be like rocks, trees, blah, blah, blah. So places I know I can disturb their shot towards me. But if I'm headed towards that rock, I will blindly just be like, boom, 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 and shoot the grenades off to get around the corner, hoping that their AI is going to track them towards me around that corner, which notoriously most games do. And they walk into it. And it's such a satisfying feel to come around the corner ready and nobody's there. You'll come around the corner and be like, okay, everybody's dead. They all got shot by those grenades. It feels good, man. Some of those weapons have a weird strategy to them that they don't appear to at first, but they definitely do. I want to read a super chat here. And by the way, I want to say welcome back. I haven't talked to you in a while, but Spec Ops, $50 super chat. Did I make it? Did I make the free crack giveaway? I mean, we're always giving away free crack.
That's only available in the States, though.
It's only in the States, only in the States, because we just give it away, apparently, here. But thank you very much for the super chat. It was nice talking to you again yesterday in Discord. I hope you get a chance to stop by. Dude's a beast, man. He's one of the few guys in the world where, you'll see somebody and you'll be like, they'll be doing stuff, and you're like, man, that guy does a lot. This is one of the few times where I consistently, because everybody teases me for doing a lot, but then he'll come back in, or I'll be talking to him on DMs. He's like, yeah, I'm doing this. Like, damn, son, man, you got some energy. But I appreciate it, as always, Specs. I hope you're doing very well. It sounds like you are. Sounds like you're doing better than most, which is awesome to hear. Looking at the poll, nobody's looking forward to Battlefield, really. 36% currently on Battlefield. Damn. Speaking of that, Spec Ops, are you interested in the Battlefield? Because I know he's a shooter fan. As a shooter fan, we'll definitely talk about Battlefield. I'm really looking forward to it. I want to talk about some of the discussion around it, though, which is sort of funny. I would say with Doom real quick. So, there's some strategies and there's the skills that can change some things. I think both of those can be highly advantageous if you play a particular way. I think it'll take longer to understand the meta, like longer as in all gamers playing it, deciding what the meta of things are. I think the Shredder's one of my favorites. I will say this, though. They sound okay, but there isn't a gun in this game that there's occasionally you'll get that game that's got that gun or that explosion or that power that has that Pavlov dog feel to it, where you're like, I need to use that more because the sound of it is glorious. It doesn't even have to be boomy. It doesn't have to be whatever. The Needler, for instance, triggers something. It's like exciting to me. Just that, and whistling past you or whatever. And I notice that with other Halo guns, I'm not into that. When I hear the assault rifle, I'm like, that sounds almost like the old style of guns prior to the movie Heat, where the guns sound canned. They sounded like I went and bought a 50-pack of sound samples. That's not nearly that bad here. I just noticed that there wasn't really a gun that made me sit up and go, yeah, that thing, that's got it. I would say the chain sounds pretty goddamn cool, but I hated the weapon, man. I hate that weapon. I hate it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like the chain attack. I don't like the way it works. It looks sort of goofy when you use it, but I love the sound of
it's
chain.
A bit clunky.
I love that, that almost like a battleship putting down an anchor. I love that kind of sound. I thought that one was great.
Yeah, the parry was a good sound though. They got a good
parry was a
ear
good
candy sound with the parry. Yeah.
I talked to everybody in chat, by the way, to switch it to fastest speed and to turn the coloring off so they can't see the parry. They can't tell which one is parry, and got to admit, man, about 6 of them, I think 4 have stuck with that, which was pretty goddamn exciting to me. Daniel says, haven't tuned in a while. Anyone know what happened to Absy? Holy shit, that's ages ago. Absy he moved, and his time doesn't work for our Friday podcasts. I don't even know if they work for the Wednesday podcast anymore. I haven't talked to him about that in a while, but he's in Discord. We're still yakking and chatting. Streamed about a week ago. He jumped in and streamed. The hell did Absy stream? I don't remember. But anyway, no, he's doing very well. Let's see. Oregon Fresh said, did I hear Battlefront 2 has an actual player base again? Yes, you did. We'll talk about that too, because there's some oddities there. Anything else for Doom or any other games that wrap up this week, like in the last couple days that we played?
Not really. That's about it for me.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen anything else that's really grabbed my attention. I did Deliver at All Costs. By the way, yeah, it's true. YouTube did not send that to subscribers. Whatever. We had a premiere error that is actually cropped up multiple times. I'm very hopeful the Game of June video that goes live in about 8 minutes does not have the same problem. But Premiere, I don't know. Are you using Premiere, Johnny?
I'm using DaVinci right now.
Okay. So DaVinci I was trying to use, and I had a bug in that. So to fix this, so I went back to Premiere, and I got it fixed in Premiere. But Premiere it's duplicating audio recording moments and put them in random places. So when I was doing the June video, I was in here with a bunch of guys, and I was editing while they were talking, and I looked at the subtitles, and my brain did that thing where you're like, it must be another language, because and so Premiere literally was telling me it was saying something else and was talking about a completely different game in my June video. It was weird. So I went and looked, and the audio files are not saving, or they're saving and then going away as you're editing the video. So I had I think 4 files that I had to re-record, where I had to go find out what game I was talking about, because it would just show up as blank. That happened on Deliver at All Costs. So I deleted that video, posted it back, and I guess YouTube was like, we don't like that you uploaded the same video or something, and it didn't give it out to subscribers. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, Deliver at All Costs is on the channel as an upload that you for sure did not get. And that was an enjoyable game, but a tight-ass camera, man. Straight up Diablo style. I mean, that is closer than Diablo. It is hard.
Claustrophobic. It's like you're locked in.
That car is at the edges of somebody's vision. It's so big in that game. And that's why the game runs at 6,000 FPS. I mean, that game runs insanely well, but I have a feeling a lot of that is tied to the viewpoint. Destruction is awesome. Very enjoyable there. Played some Precinct. Pretty enjoyable game. Pretty clunky, but I think enjoyable if you want to just sit back and, shoot some people, or, well, you're not supposed to shoot people. You're supposed to be a good guy in that one. So I take that back. If you want to jump in, you want to be a police officer and do everything right, that's the game for you. We can move on to Battlefield because people do want to talk about it. So the reason why I want to talk about this, I told Johnny a bit prior, but Battlefield in the last couple of days has had all these leaks on Reddit, all these Battlefield destruction videos that look magnificent. The Reddit was just, and it's not just Reddit, it was another forum. I was on Telegram. People are like, oh my God, this looks amazing. This is the great. This looks to be insane. We showed it in the Discord. People were like, holy crap, look at the destruction. This should be great, because the shooting is generally pretty solid in the Battlefield games. However, they just announced that they really won't have restrictions on any guns. So you'll still have special stuff that works for every class, but it looks like they're saying that all the guns, basically all the platforms, the basic platforms, are available to everybody. And holy crap, it's a sign of how quick things turn, man. Because it went overnight from being insanely positive, everybody's super excited about everything, to, there was no lie, I think it was on Reddit, there was a poster who said, we need to supervise their creation of this game. And I was like, that's a gamer, man. That's a gamer. I need to supervise Dean Koontz' next book, and I need to tell him. It's like, dude, I get it, because they're worried about a repetition of some of the problems we've had in past games from them. But I'm more like, let them figure it out, and we'll see if it's good. I have no issue with the feedback either, but it was interesting to see, and fascinating actually, see how fast it turned. It just went from like love fest, to post-coital fucking hate. It was like, we've had sex, now we're done, and I hate you. And it was like, damn, that switched quick. But I don't know. Do you play shooters enough that's gonna, do you like the idea of crawling through the weapons? And that some things are not, like particular platforms are not available for each class at all, and you have to be a different class, or you have to level up something to get that? Or are you more of a fan of everything basically is for you, but then you get other stuff?
So I'm pretty casual in those games. I dabble, but more so to have fun with friends rather than really trying to like hone in my skills in those. But what I've always liked about Battlefield games has been the variety of like vehicles and, air and land, right? That you can get into, like tanks, helicopters, all this type of stuff. And that's always been super fun with friends when you're coordinating, like, hey, I'm coming in with the helicopter, right? We're taking this flank or whatever. That's super cool. So in that sense, I'm down to try another Battlefield, and it's always cool to see like better destruction and stuff like that. Whatever they can, do with a new version. I think that actually those limitations you're talking about, maybe not limitations, but like things you have to unlock or work towards in different tracks, that actually excites me instead of the opposite, because it gives me a little sense of progression in the game in a way. Because one thing I've always missed in those games is that sense of progression, because they're often just focused on the multiplayer aspect, right? Which is, you're just going in and you're unlocking weapons and stuff, but it never felt like there was something super specific to work towards.
Right.
So that actually does excite me.
Yeah, dude, I'm okay with either one. We'll just have to see how it works out. We haven't seen everything. They've got a lot of play tests, and which were positive up till this point. And I don't quite know how those play tests didn't show or indicate that this was going to be a thing, because I don't know what they were showing in the play test. But they said it. From what I understand, for the play test, I haven't heard anybody say this. It was actually they said it. So people were doing the play test, and I haven't really heard any negatives. I will say the destruction looks on point, and the reason why I bring that up is because I think destruction, just like the finals in games that have done destruction right, they do change the way you play, and they change the threat matrix that you're using, and what you have to watch out for. And I don't know about fall damage or falling damage from debris or anything, if that's in the game. But I just generally like destruction being one of the new a new facet in games. I don't want it to be everywhere, because then it would look ridiculous. If you're just paper macheing a bunch of like you're knocking down some kid's card, the card house that they put it together on recess, and you're like, hey, Fuck you. So I don't want to be able to destroy everything, but from what I've seen, it looks really well done, and it doesn't seem to really impact the frame rate. It seems like it's still, really performant, which is nice. I think it looks awesome.
I don't know if it was official, by the way, because what I saw was like leak. So I don't know if it's like official footage.
I think a lot of them are leaks. I haven't even tracked it because they're everywhere. They're on Twitter. Everything gets posted on Reddit, and some of it, I'm sure the developers are like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I thought it did look very smooth.
I thought
for what it's worth
as well.
What I saw.
Yeah, it looks pretty sweet. At least that's what I thought. We'll have to see how it all pans out, but it's just another indicator, though, of how quickly one particular, I guess you would say, like really a linchpin of your game, if you do change it, just like Doom changed some stuff, if you do change it, you have to be prepped for that kind of feedback where, you're like, okay, we're changing your progression, and people who are into that, and they have a bad memory, by the way. One of the guys was saying what other Battlefield did this, and it could be one or two, but one of the others did it that it really didn't work out. 2042. Yeah, I think that's the one they said. And it really didn't work out. But what's interesting to me is, at least from what I could see, that wasn't the only reason that game didn't work out. And so it's sort of we talked about it last week, where if a game runs poorly, somebody will attach that to whatever they don't like so that the critique seems, to have more weight. They'll be like, it doesn't run well and I don't like the music, therefore the entire game is bad. And you're like, whoa, wait, okay. Look, you have to sort of separate things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks
cool. I think
man.
destruction is a good thing to index on in terms of like improvements, because everything else, like visuals, it's kind of getting to diminishing returns, where there's a limit to how realistic you can make a rock look nowadays, because just assets in Unreal 5 look so damn realistic already, like stuff that you can get for free, right?
Or Star Wars Battlefront 2. I mean, there's some levels in that where you're like, that game is ancient now. And you look at it and you're like, damn, son, that looks fucking wicked. Some are mods, obviously, but you get the drift.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's exciting to have that track to expand upon, rather than just visuals.
Yeah, I think for a while it was vehicles for these games. That seemed to be the thing. And then you have that sort of, I would say, somewhat getting solidified in some games fairly well. And then others have adjusted and sort of, they've taken whatever tact that they want to take, and they're like, this is going to be what we're known for. And you see it fleshing out in the free-to-play games too. Like the finals really doesn't have a lot of crazy shit other than the destruction, and that works really well. I like the finals. I think it's actually a pretty fine, free-to-play game. That's one of the things that works for it is destruction. I agree. I think destruction's a good place to go right now with where we are in graphics, because it's really tough to make your game look, 10 times better or something like that. Sully with the $10 super chat finally made a live one. Thanks for the best, Carrick, Johnny, and Silver. Thank you very much. I'll pass that on to Silver, who will be here next week. Silver does every other week now, so that he can rest up, probably watching some old black and white TV show that would bore the fuck out of me. And then he'll want to talk about it. I'm just joking. He doesn't give me that kind of shit. But so I guess with Battlefield, the other thing, Call of Duty sort of seems not resting on its laurels, but it did pretty well in the last one. We'll have to see where that one's going. What other big shooters are there? What's up, Zach Speed? $1 super chat. Hope you're doing well. Are there any other shooters that you can remember?
So like outside of Call of Duty?
Call of Duty Battlefield. We've got Gray Zone, or I think is the other one. And then we've got some extractions.
Yeah, the extraction ones are pretty big in their niche, right?
Yeah.
Escape from Tarkov, Hunt Showdown.
Arc Raiders looks good.
Interestingly, I was gonna talk about Arc Raiders because that one, first of all, it looked good, I thought, for like the early showing they had. So it's not the full version yet. It's a bit far from it. But I thought it looked good, and it had some stylistic chops that made it look unique too, which is nice. But I had a question for you, because that game is third person, actually, as an extraction shooter. And it seems to me that like a big part of the extraction shooter is the like making the gunfights really lethal. And there's something about the third person that allows you to have much more understanding of where everybody is, because you can look around cover, right?
Yeah.
So all this type of stuff. And I can see a lot of stalemate situations where, like, imagine two people, they're just behind cover, they're seeing each other clearly, but they're just like, nothing's happening because they're both, it's like a stalemate situation. And that's not something that would happen in first person.
Dude, I don't even know. I don't even know how they decide between third and first, because it's got to be difficult as shit to identify how you're going to do your entire curve of difficulty and lethality and guns if somebody can see around a corner, like you said. That's got to be really difficult as a developer to say, okay, we're gonna go ahead and do third person on this one, and the first, everybody's gonna be like, how are we gonna handle around corners? How are we gonna handle FOVs being cranked? Where even a small FOV adjustment is still going to be bigger than a first person game. So yeah, true. I don't know. I mean, extraction games, they have hinged on first person, but I think that maybe that's one of the things people like, is being able to see your character. I mean, if you look at Division has extraction moments in its free world stuff. There's little things you have to do, and you have to get here.
And it has that mode, right? The what's called the death zone or whatever.
Yeah, it's got
like
the dark zone.
Dark zone. Yeah.
But I was just saying that maybe they were going for that more than something like Hunt. I think Hunt Showdown, though, and these games, the big thing for me is the reward and risk curve and how that pays off. We'll just have to see how Arc Raiders pays off. Because, dude, if they don't pay off, they're uncomfortable as shit to play. Like, at some point, you're just like, oh, dude, I can't handle this. What's up, Wizard? $2 super chat. Hello, Carrick. Oi, Johnny. And happy Friday, friendos. What's up, sir? Hope you're doing well.
What?
Thanks for the DM I got. Are you playing Microsoft Flight Sim, Wizard? Or I know you said you were super busy doing other stuff, but I've wondered where that game's been and how it's doing. Yeah, man. I don't know about you, but Extraction also, it's just hard sometimes to want to jump in. So it's going to be interesting to see where Arc Raiders sort of shows up and if it pulls me in or not. It's going to be, I'm sort of biding my time on that one. Craig, $10 super chat. Thanks again for the podcast. Really helps after a shitty week. Oh, that sucks. Hope your week gets better. I mean, Johnny had a shitty week last week. So, like, we're real people too.
But I think the important thing is, like, it trended positively. Because if the week starts great but ends shit, that's a worse scenario.
Right.
So at least it ended pretty good, And usually, like, the podcast, I'm already, like, chilling. It's always usually, like, going to a high anyway, because we're just talking and having a good time. So
I think when it comes to the end of the week, the best thing to do is spend it with friends if you can, or family, if you like your family. That's okay, too. You're weird, but if you like your family, fine, I guess. But it definitely does spin my week into the end of my week into a better spot when you're jumping in and you're able to, like, sort of just enjoy yourself hanging out with friends on the week or at the end of the week and then rolling into the weekend. But I guess you jump in on the weekend too a lot of times. Now that I think about it, like we talk a lot, probably too much.
Yeah, we talk on weekends.
My wife probably thinks we're having some kind of love affair. Speaking of my wife, I gotta read you this question. This is awesome. So, I didn't get the name on this. Okay, I did. She did. The person who gives me these questions didn't give me the name on this one, so I apologize. If you're in chat, you can tell me it's you, whatever. Carrick, I saw some dude tripping balls saying you'd been married 7 times. I know you haven't, but you've always joked about bad relationships when you were younger. It reminded me of how fast information gets corrupted during discussion, and reminded me of some game leaks or rumors or talk. I wonder how much time developers, video makers, everyone wastes when it comes to shooting down the latest random shit. And so dude, it's so true. I was thinking about that a couple days ago, and he also added in, we should bit chain data somehow. And I love the idea of that, where you bit chain data. Like, this is like a wiki, even though wikis can be incorrect, but somehow you get the factual data out there. It's Bitcoined or bit chained, so it's in the chain. And then it's connected to your Bitcoin. And if you spread bullshit, it just removes $1. It's like, fuck you, man. Here's $1 removed each time you just spread lies or bullshit. But when it comes to developers, even myself at times wasting time on a comment where somebody says something that you, dude, remember that guy telling everybody I hated Zelda?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? That's so out of the blue made up that you're like, you're sitting there going, I gotta step in front of that and be like, no, I fucking didn't hate Zelda. What are you talking about? You know, so you get those kind of situations. But I love the idea of somehow maybe a forum or something where if you enter the forum and you get caught spreading bullshit, it's just like ping, 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 ping. We're gonna take away $1 from your Bitcoin. On the other hand, we'd all be poor, not have any money. Wizard of Smoke says, yes, still grinding the career mode and Flight Sim. They did an update earlier this month that added some bugs that caused crashes.
Oh.
But they just fixed that this week and fixed another day one bug. Well, that's a shitter. Damn. Oregon Fresh says Memorial Day weekend is always one of my faves. Barbecue, poolside, and perhaps an adult beverage.
Ooh, yeah.
Is it Memorial Day?
Not for us, but we still have the Monday off. So it's just like,
dude, you guys
spring
are lazy.
holiday.
You're like,
we don't have,
you're like, hey,
we don't have names for.
You guys have a holiday off. We're gonna attach ourselves to yours.
Yeah,
I love it. Let's see what else do we got here for questions.
But you were saying, so just on that thought about the question there, it used to be that the best, if something was being said about you that wasn't true, the best thing was just to kind of ignore it, keep producing your content, and people remember the latest thing. So make the latest thing be something else rather than what was posted. So just kind of let it churn through the system.
Yeah.
But
that
it kind of feels like now, I don't know, because you've been in some of these situations where something is said about you and it takes a life of its own.
Yeah.
Is it now better to actually address it? And what is your approach to something like that?
I think that the mob has their own voice that can start via, podcasts or, whatever else it might be. And it's probably best to step in front of something if it's a complete lie about like something you did. I've always believed, and maybe it's because of the way that, stuff I got dealt with when I was a kid, but if you got caught lying, you were called out. Like you weren't going to be able to just lie. So I've always believed that that's the best. If somebody says, hey, I didn't like your review, that's not the thing. But if somebody says you gave this game, by the way, I saw this recently. Carrick gave, I can't remember what it was, but it was a couple Ubisoft games a buy. And I was like, no, I didn't. What are you even talking about? That's absolutely not true. So step in front of those. But I think the big thing is that everybody has a voice, and even the lowest level, unibrow dude out there can have 500-600 people. And if they continue to spread that FUD, it becomes a thing. I still do believe generally to outcreate problems. I think most of the people I talk to when they contact me about having problems, I'm like, you know what? You should probably just outcreate it. Just continue moving forward. But when it comes down to your good name or something, which we've seen all the way back, prior to Total Biscuit, but we saw stuff where people said stuff about him, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I don't really see a problem with that person being like, you're fucking lying, and like, here's the actual proof or whatever, if you have to link something that you said or something you did. But it's up to the creator, I guess. I would say for the most part, it's up to the creator. I do love the idea that I've been married 7 times. I was like, I don't know who that was, but that was like, I think I would have some explaining to do if that were true. I don't think I'd be married if I was married 7 times prior. I don't think that's a good track record.
Nope. Like the 8th person would be like,
I feel like the 8th person would have been like, what the fuck? Yeah. But it goes to show you how somebody will just use a little bit to push. And the same goes with games. We see it with games where a little bit here is pushed, and then it suddenly blossoms into this massive thing where, sometimes there's truth to it, like the Bungie stuff that's occurred. But sometimes there isn't, and you have to sort of look at it and identify. And I guess trust your sources would be the most important. Yeah, trust in your sources. Let's see. Johnny Blue Jean says, wait, what? He said, Carrick hate. No, this is Powder Cake says Carrick hates Mario Kart, not Zelda. Damn. Dude, just for calling into question Mario Kart, people just think I hate him. or hate it.
Because you said it wasn't like a big game, right?
Oh no, I've always
Compared
been
to
less excited for Mario Karts. You know,
yeah,
because I think GB would talk up Mario Kart when he was on the podcast all the time.
sure.
I think he had a Switch at that time, but he for sure had a Wii and a Wii U, and I think it was him. And I was just like, you know, just doesn't appeal to me. Doesn't mean it's bad. One of those things. Speaking of that, what's a game that is universally loved? Universally loved. Like lyrically, linguistically filleted at all times that you do not like.
Yeah, I didn't like Disco Elysium that much.
Oh, damn.
So
yeah, I forgot.
That's still a sore spot. Yeah, it's still a sore spot. Yeah, it was just a bit rough for me to get through a lot of the heavy exposition in it.
Mm-hmm.
About like, you know, the post-war stuff. Like there was a lot of history stuff kind of jammed in there that I wasn't super keen on.
Okay, that's fair.
But like some of the setting with the French stuff is not really up my alley.
That's
but
fair.
It's one of those where while it doesn't float my boat, I can completely understand like why people see it. Because even in my playthrough, I had a lot of really fun, iconic moments like dying from depression because like I don't know, there's something random like, you know, like someone wouldn't sell me something at a shop or whatever.
I
like,
love that kind of stuff.
Just so small things. Yeah.
You know what's interesting to me though, Johnny, what you said makes sense because I think Disco Elysium's popularity, though I'm somebody who likes it, is very distinct because it's within a genre and it's a very unique game in that genre, unique even to that genre. And so the idea that everybody likes it just makes no sense. So when you say that it didn't hit for you, I'm like, dude, why would it? Why would it? You know, it's like if somebody says this sexual visual novel hits for me.
Okay, so it is maybe a bit of a niche game, right? So
Dude,
it's not
Disco is niche within a niche within a niche. It is so tied down that so when you say that, that's the same reason why I don't get angry when people do think that I hate like Mario Kart, because I'm like, it's Mario Kart, meaning there's 3 or 4 things, including Mario himself.
Yeah, it's filtering like on 3 different.
Yeah, it's filtering on 3 levels.
Things.
So, like, I get it. Now, of course, Mario sells, you know, whatever, and Disco sold great for what it was. But Disco was, I mean, they even decided to add the vocals later because there's a lot of reading. Something like that. When you say that it's not for you, to me, I'm like, I absolutely see not only why it wasn't for you, but why it would even be hard for you to get, as in buy, as in play. Like, there's so many levels that I'm surprised you played that, just because it would have required you to look at it and then know what it was and then realize that you might have to fight through it. And still, after all that, you gave it a chance, which is more than most people who hate things. You gave it like, you got through 3 or 4 filters and you still gave it a chance, which is
still gave it a chance.
Yeah, that's way more than a lot of people.
What about you? I mean, Death Stranding is always an infamous one. Do you have any others?
Let me read these guys, and I do have one. Some Wizard of Smoke said Carrick hates New Vegas. Jeez. Fighting Dog says KOTOR. Craig says GTA. I can see GTA for sure. I mean, I absolutely understand why people would not like a GTA game, and I do understand why people like it, but come on. Oregon Fresh says Ghosts. I get that. I think that's a good game, but I definitely can understand why somebody would feel it was just the wind dynamic was the only special thing about it. Plague Soul says Skyrim. Okay. Wizard of Smoke says Dark Souls games, including Elden Ring. Okay, now it's getting hot. Romulus, who I believe is John, said Red Dead 2. Okay, these are getting... Craig says Final Fantasy, all of them. Ones. What's happening? Now it's just descending to utter madness.
Okay, we're looking for shock factor here.
Drum Dude says, to a lesser degree, Helldivers, which I do understand Helldivers. I mean, I understand all these, but Powder Cake says, one of my friends didn't want to play Disco because it was isometric. Totally, like, that's a thing, too. Rick 3K says BG3. That is a...
Really?
That's a good... That is one that I think... isn't niched too far down, but when you say you dislike it, yeah, you're probably gonna hear about it because it did bring in a bunch of people to that. That's a good one.
But I still can see it. Like if you hate the turn-based thing, Because turns take a long time, man.
Yeah.
Like enemy turns will go for a while sometimes.
Yeah, and just constantly
Need
trying
some
to
patience,
dodge, trying
too.
to, sorry, not trying
Yeah.
to dodge, but trying to figure out what move you're going to do, and then if you decide to sort of go with a subclass, you're restricting yourself a little bit in that game. Ooh, to be honest, the Horizon Zero Dawn games as well. This is like, damn. Hot Take Central, Zaxby says, it is pretty hot. Houston says Diablo 4.
Of course.
Purple Sticky, sorry, says Red Dead 2 for sure. Damn. Okay, those are pretty hot.
Wow,
See, those
really?
are hotter than yours. So I think, for me, I'm not gonna say we're all probably just going on games that didn't grab us versus like absolutely hate. But I would say games that didn't grab me for sure would be Death Stranding. Death Stranding 2, I really am looking forward to. Even put it on the list that I think that video, the video went live. I'm definitely looking forward to Death Stranding 2, but Death Stranding 1 I gave it a good college try, and that was not for me. Lansby says, I've been trying to get into Path of Exile and can't get into it. It doesn't resonate at all. That's fair. That's fair. Kel says, it wasn't the turn-based thing that turned me off of BG3. There's something about the way Larian presents her stories has never connected with me. Now, that's not a hot take as much as I sort of understand that for the other games. For example, this is easier to get away with, saying Kojima and the way he delivers story doesn't appeal to me as much. Larian, I get that comment, but I could see somebody being like, whoa, what? Because I think a lot of people chum up their writing chops in BG3. But I actually sort of agree in BG3, the way they present their stories sometimes. That would take a long time. We could do a podcast just on breaking down how they deliver
the writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because do you feel it's changed since prior games like Divinity Original Sin 2 or even older ones like Divine Divinity and stuff?
Divine Divinity is one of my favorite games of all time. And I would say that there is a slight change, but the D&D rule set changed how they deliver the story because they have to deliver it in a certain way. They're pretty close to the same, though. They are pretty close to the same. But here's the thing. That game was like 25 years ago. So what they delivered then was more awe-inspiring to me. And then Baldur's Gate is in Baldur's Gate, which is a world I've explored before. So there's a little less freshness there, It's
I can see that.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So
I think from my perspective, what I saw is that Divinity Original Sin 2, which I really liked, I played the whole game.
Right.
Was like 100 hours of a journey, but it was very like high fantasy, high brow.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the expression?
Yes. Yeah. Like, high fantasy, high brow. Yeah.
Yeah. So like everything was sort of, very formal in everything you read and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a bit hard to parse for me. I didn't like the writing there as much as I liked in BG3, because BG3 was a little bit more like, I guess, grim with all the, tentacle action stuff, like otherworldly, like eldritch things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's much more grounded English that was being used, I felt. Although they still have, I guess, like the mage guy still speaks like, so, like some high fantasy character, but there was much more grounded writing, I thought, which did help.
Maybe we'll talk about it at the end. I don't want to break into it now because it's too long of a discussion, but I will say that every single developer's desire to consistently put in anti-heroes as your companions is tiring. So at some point, all these developers, and this is because it sells, and so there's nothing wrong with this. It's just for me. I'm like, I get that my companion's a bitch, or I get that he's a dick, or I get that he's scary, or I get that he's murderous, but sometimes I want a group of people who I sort of like the group that comes together a little bit more cohesively than comes together because the big bad is so big and bad that you all need to rush towards him because it ultimately breaks down when a quest has you stealing a loaf of bread. So if this dickhead is with me and he hates me and I hate him, but he's with me because the big bad is there, and then we're spending a good deal of our time helping a merchant figure out why the plants that he's got are not growing as strongly. And you're like, seriously? Things start to disconnect if you sit too long. and you start going like, dude, what are we doing?
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't like to bring it up because I don't think it's super positive to bring it up. It's more for me than it is, you know.
Well, it's also hard to do because you do want to give consequences to your choices.
Right.
And align more with certain characters. I totally see that. But it does hurt the overall cohesion of the group when every single decision you make is creating a rift between you and some character.
Yeah, there's the tit
and
for tat, right?
Bring you closer to another. Whereas other games have this picture of, listen, there's some friction, but we're all getting along and we're all sort of, having a crack together. Like we always talk about Final Fantasy 15 with the gang, right? Like definitely you had different personalities that kind of came into conflict at times, but it always felt like at the end of the day, you're sort of coming together and there's that camaraderie. Whereas, I mean, some characters just plainly don't feel that way in BG3, like Lazelle, right? She never really, well, I guess I didn't pursue her as like being close to her. So she was always a sore thumb in my playthrough.
Yeah.
And I was pretty much happy to get rid of her. But I guess that's also a stylistic decision, right? How much you lean on the camaraderie versus
I think it's also
individual
a pretty
relationship.
I think a lot of devs look at it as a really not easy, but another way to add complexity that isn't called alignment. Because definitely even in role playing, people have gone away from alignment, like your lawful good or whatever. And so it's like, okay, we're gonna have alignment and your choices and people and karma or whatever your game is. And then it's like, oh, but we're also gonna have these characters in your party that are consistently contrasting with whatever choices you make so that you can never make everybody happy. And I get it, but after you play enough of them, you really get it, if you get my drift. Like, I get it. It's you become jaded, or not jaded, but you become accustomed to it after a while, to where you sort of know that if I make this decision, if I have 6 people in my group, 4 are going to like it, 1 is going to absolutely hate it, 1 is going to love it. Like that. And by the way, you can track that. If you just play the game, you can quite literally, you just sort of know. You're like, this is what's going to happen for sure. Is they're going to have this split if I have 6 with me. So I don't know about you. You can cheat this. There's a lot of games where you can choose when to get your party members. So what you do is you do those quests that will piss off that party member before you get that party member. Like that is, by the way, that is like a cheat from old D&D where you're like, we know that if we go talk to this person, a thing is going to probably change. So let's do everything we can. So we show up and that person has no connection to those choices we made so that we can start anew because we know this is going to go a certain way here. And you see it with Baldur's Gate where people are like, oh, I'm going to wait for this or I'm going to do this. Which is not bad. It just shows a good complexity, but after a while you become accustomed to it. That's all. Yeah. Let's see. Flexing Mecha says every Persona game. That's not really a hot take though. I get that. Persona games have that look, right? Persona games are they're a thing. Like I don't think anybody could say Persona games don't have a specific
it's a very distinct flavor.
It's a very distinct flavor, yeah. And it probably comes or encroaches quite close to something like anime, which, also some people aren't big fans of, including myself, depending on the anime. So I could see somebody looking at Persona and just saying, these characters and their archetypes and their caricatures aren't for me. That makes complete sense. Sorry, I had to reload my page here and missed some, so I'm going to go through these. I got the kills. Okay, Pentagon Fortress says, God of War 2018, not bad. Just never cared about the characters of the villain. Okay, all right. Wizard of Smoke says, I fell asleep playing Death Stranding. Hey, that's, I feel like that might have been something he wanted. I don't know. PK Ziggy says, that's weird, given BG3 has like a fully voice-acted story. Oh, he must be talking to somebody else. Zaxby says, I put 10 hours into Death Stranding, gave up. Not for me. Larian has a strong style that has carried from Divinity in how they mix the humor, Rogerio says. Kel says, random, but there's a bald eagle circling the pond out back of my house. Bring your dogs in. Wizard of Smoke says, Zaxby, him being full of himself, cannot see him making a game called... Oh, I can see him making a game called Video Kojima about himself. That's funny. Oregon Fresh says, doing another playthrough on BG3 right now. Total Evil. Kind of amazed. Let's see. Anybody else? Why Johnny looks so mad? What did I do, Johnny? Zaxby says. Zaxby's got a bit of main character syndrome. We love you, Zaxby, but don't worry. Manual, $5 super chat. What's the smallest gaming hill you'd die on? Great show. Ooh, what's the smallest gaming hill you would die on? Smallest gaming hill you would die on? I have a hot take as shit, and it's way too big, so I don't think I'll die on that one today. I'll just die on it. Because some people think it's small, so I'm going to use it against them. I'm going to say the reason why I'm bringing this one up is because I'm using it. Other people have said it's a small thing and I should get over it. I don't think in any way, shape, or form there is a requirement nor any real reason to have the parry or dodge in Expedition 33. And I think ultimately the ability to turn it off, not have them have to remove it, but the ability to turn it off and worry about the development curve and the difficulty and damage curve, I believe that is fixable or doable. And then a good number of people that I've seen who bounced off of it, that is a particular issue for them. The side point of that is other people say that they didn't notice they were doing QTEs, which I find odd because QTEs are a notoriously huge deal in every other game where they become super bothersome. And so there's definitely a break currently right now in even people's understanding of what a QTE and how you're going to accept it, because people even I know who hate QTEs in any other game of any kind and will say that game's not a real game, there's a QTE. Even if it involves getting out of damage in other games, they suddenly are okay with it there where you repetitively do it for hours on end. So I'll say it's big. I didn't like it, but because people have said that the QTEs are barely a part of the game, which I don't understand when there's like 10,000 of them, but regardless, I'll say that's a small thing. So that's my
I think people think of QTEs as a prompt on screen that tells you what button to push specifically, and somehow the defensive reactions, the parry and the dodging, are not registering to those people as
Maybe
QTEs
so.
because it's a fixed button.
Maybe so.
But I think that's more of like a semantic thing, whether like people want to define it that way. At the end of the day, it is a QTE, right? It's a reaction you have to do to something that's happening. I have a different perspective on it. I thought that the dodging made the enemy turns feel much more engaging. Because for me, as someone who sometimes struggles in turn-based games to stay interested, the enemy turns is always something that's really mind-numbing, because the enemies are just kind of executing their attacks as normal. And you're just there watching. Sometimes it even takes a long time. So the fact that I actually have to be engaged and dodge it felt good. And I thought that the implementation was good because it was satisfying when you hit, whether the parry or the dodge. It did feel good. I think it was a bit too tight. I will say that.
I have a question for you.
And yeah.
How are you saying that the QTs made the enemy attacks more engaging compared to other turn-based games, when other turn-based games also have had you not have to do a QTE, and you could many times in a lot of those, including Persona, you're hitting one button and watching you attack. So why is there a separation between a positive now for this game when technically if you go back to the games that caused that positive, why did you not fall asleep in the attack phase on your end? Because, I mean, many times in those games, you are just hitting AX and you're attacking, and they're hitting whatever button and then they're attacking.
Yeah, gotcha. So in some games, I did fall asleep in the ones where you're pretty much doing the same thing every turn, right? So you're
as
just
in the player.
Yeah,
right?
like as in the play, you're issuing the same command, almost like every encounter you have in some games, you have your bread and butter combo. You're just doing the same thing all the time. Those do get very tiresome. So I like the ones that force you to switch it up or maybe have to adapt. And so that part is more active because you do have to think about what commands you're issuing.
Yeah.
So I like that. I also like ones where they mix some real-time things, like maybe you're moving around. Like
Yeah.
a couple of the Final
Yakuza
Fantasies have done this.
does it.
Yeah, Yakuza does
Yeah.
it. Final Fantasy 12 Zodiac has a good one that has a combination of you moving around with turn-based, and then also the templates or the gambits where you can
Yeah,
define
love
the
those.
behavior of your allies. Very cool. So that's also a good way to do it, where you have some agency and some kind of strategic decision making in it. It keeps you more engaged.
You know what I would love? If there was movement in Expedition, it would have been nice. Also, I didn't really like the secondary team coming in versus if they were all in a line and moving around. There was something very old feeling in that. Something very almost visual novel where you were just staring at their asses. But then there was this action part that popped up. So, but again, that's like I see people agreeing and disagreeing. I think when it comes down to it, especially like somebody said they beat it and still didn't like those. That's what I did. Is I think people get confused and assume because you don't like everything in something, you don't like anything of something. And I got to tell you, man, I don't think there's a game in history that, even in my most cherished games or whatever, that I haven't been like, oh, this really frustrates me. Or a book that I love. There'll be a character that, like that's just sort of life. And it depends on how long you interact with it. And in Expedition, you interact with it for a great deal of time. Which is weird too, because I saw people saying, oh, well, it's risk. And I didn't feel much risk. But that's probably because dodge was so easy. And you could also hammer the shit out of the buttons, which definitely made it. You learn that pretty quick. You're like, you know what? I can get out of this pretty easily by just hammering the buttons. So, yeah, it's just one of those weird ones. Fighting Dog says, agreeable take. I beat Expedition at full story. Some side content, died probably 20 times. The game needs a pure turn-based mode. Yeah, that would be fun to see it. I think also I get a little sadness when I do see other people, because I did genuinely like a great deal of that game. I do get sadness when people bounce so hard off of it. So hard that they're like, I'm done. I don't like this at all. And you're like, damn, you know what? If it did have that person might be the person who doesn't fall asleep like you did when it is just back and forth. And that person could also enjoy the story, even though that story was a little out there.
Yeah, sorry, I think my internet was freezing out a little bit.
You're good for me.
To be back.
No worries. Fighting Dog says, but I hate it when games make you die. Like there's literally nobody who's playing the game first time and not dying. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, that does suck. Sea Bear says, mine is too many people care about what other people think about a game they enjoy. Like you don't need your favorite streamer to agree with you. Just play. That's not a small hill. That's not even a game, but I do understand the thought. Love the games. $2 super chat. Just started Gravity Falls last night. Great show. Gravity Falls is awesome. Have you seen Gravity Falls, Johnny? Oh, you are freezing a little bit, John.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
Let's see if it recovers.
It happens. Yeah. Oregon Fresh says Gambits were awesome. Rogerio says the Mario RPG games had fun QTEs like commands. And then also says, I don't know, man. Mascots and children in JRPGs tend to ruin my experience. Hey, I have a question for you. You're back. You're good to go. Do kids in games, do you get mad when they're not there? So like if you're running around GTA and there's no, toe-headed, bowl-cut kid running around, some influencer, does that bother you? I sold it poorly. I just made them sound terrible. But you get my drift. Like, do kids not being in games break your immersion?
I don't think I even thought about that. You're right. Yeah, GTAs don't really have kids, right?
I guess the answer would be no then.
Not so far. No, I haven't focused on that.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, it's come up with the GTA 6 talk where somebody thinks they found a kid in like a cutscene, and they were like, "Oh, will we have kids in the game?" And if we do, somebody's going to be,
killing kids or something.
It's going to be a unique one. I think when it comes down to putting kids in games, they're treated as like a protected class in a way. And so the idea of, and this popped up with Red Dead when the guy took all the ladies and killed them and put them on the train track and got his YouTube channel banned. Which is weird because that's a mechanic in the game. Like all that stuff is in the game. So I find that particular situation sort of distasteful on YouTube's side. Not sort of. I greatly do because that's just in the game. you should be able to post it and not lose your channel. If they want to demonetize it, let them demonetize it. But
yeah,
losing your channel was sort of a crazy experience for that guy, I'm sure. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't notice it either. I'm trying to think of a game that had kids just walking around in it. Watch Dogs doesn't have kids. Far Cry.
Yeah.
Games based with guns and violence.
Yeah, like Fallout.
Have them. Fallout?
No kids in Fallout, I think.
No.
Were there? Fallout 4?
Why do I feel like... Oh, man.
Maybe there were some kids.
And mods versus real game rub up against each other in this discussion?
Yeah.
Bully was all about kids. Yeah, Bully was great. Bully was amazing because you got to, you fought with like slingshots, which I know you could kill somebody with a slingshot, but it still worked out as a thing where you'd hit somebody in the head with a slingshot and you were like, shucky darns. And everybody was all, yay, he's probably fine. And you just move off and it's totally, everybody's good with it. Stelio Farts says, salute ACG and company. So ready for BF6. So am I. I'm excited. Very excited for it. Skyrim had kids. Yeah, he says old Fallout games, but what's old mean? Because there's only 4 and they're all old. So I don't quite know. Do you mean like Fallout 1 and 2? Because if so,
how old?
Kids were not kids when Fallout 1 and 2 came out. Some old motherfucker. Kel says lots of kids in Hogwarts. Yeah, and you kill kids. Remember we had this discussion. When Hogwarts came out, I was like, there ain't no way you're going to be able to kill kids with like a kill spell in Hogwarts. And Hogwarts was like, let me show you something. I really liked Hogwarts, man. That's just one of those games I really do enjoy. Fallout 1 and 2. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Fallout 1 and 2 sounds fair. I was like, I didn't think they were in 4, but it's hard to remember with mods. Moving on from there, I got a couple questions that I want to answer real quick. So this, I love this. Beamster says, what's your conflict style? So do you have a conflict style? And first of all, are they different in business and personal for you, Johnny? And then if they are, which is which? Like, what's your conflict style? Let's say the level of conflict, 1 being the person is wearing a pair of pants you don't love, and 10 being they're calling you a fucker at work. Let's say this is a level of 7. They're bothering you wherever they are, whether it be personal or not. They're in your face a little bit. There's no threat of physical violence. What's your conflict style?
Like, how do I resolve? What's my resolution?
Yeah, do you walk away?
Conflict resolution?
Do you go for the leg? Are you fucking Karate Kidding this person? You uppercutting Street Fighter style? You poisoning them slowly over a long period of time? What's your conflict style?
Yeah, that's actually something I'm trying to work on because I've been kind of like a people pleaser for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to be more I guess disagreeable, but in a productive way. Mm-hmm. So not like I'm just going to say no to everything you say in a conversation just to be disagreeable.
Right.
So still trying to find like common ground and stuff. And that's usually my strategy. It's like, can I see where this person is coming from? Is there like a productive common ground we can get to, even if we acknowledge that we hate each other's guts and our objectives are completely orthogonal? So this could be at work, right? Where we say, well, those guys' goals are clearly like opposed to what I'm trying to do.
Right.
And there's nothing really we can do that's going to go in the same direction. Those are difficult. I've had a couple of those in the past. But usually it's just been like, okay, can we find like one thing where it's like the common ground where we can sort of sit there and agree where we stand at least, and at least have like a position of respect for each other. Like, we just back out. And
so do you use the same overall style then in your real personal life then as you do in business?
I think I do for like personal. If it's somebody I care about, I try to get to the bottom of things more. So if I find that I said something that bothered you, or you said something that bothered me, mm-hmm. and I'm trying to figure that out, I usually try to get to the bottom of it. And sometimes that's annoying too, because people oftentimes like to avoid conflict and not get into it.
Right.
But in those cases, I kind of feel like I need a little closure. I need a little understanding of what happened, and do like a post-mortem of what happened. So I feel like sometimes I harp on those things a little bit until I can understand them.
Mhm.
And some people find that annoying. So that's what I'd say. That's the main difference, is that if I care about the person or the relationship and stuff, I really do want to understand what happened. And yeah, I don't know. What about you?
I'll give you something you can clip. I use my mouth to get out of most problems. Boom. Sounds totally so. I do. I joke around.
Your mouth always gets you
I'm a
out
motor
of
mouth.
trouble.
I always have been. I try to joke with people if they're antagonistic. We were always taught to, like, you know, when I was younger, I was really stupid physically, you know, but like as you get older, you're like, you know, that's especially, you know, lawsuits or whatever. You just start looking at things going like, dude, not everything needs to, it's not a schoolyard. Not everybody needs to fight. So yeah, I would say I joke around a lot, irony, sarcasm, but overall I'll change if the goal that I have and the person has is in any way connected. I will try to meet some and be like, okay, what? But I will say that the big problem that doesn't seem to be talked about enough, especially when you're dealing with a majority of people, whether it be personal or work life, is that when you're dealing with somebody, you have to realize if they're 100% in on whatever you're arguing about. So if it's at work, and you have to pick your battles a little bit, because you have to be like, is this, we may have conflicting goals completely, but does it matter? Like, if it matters, then you definitely have to look at, you know, what you do. When I was in, my last job was insanely businesslike. You'd have to, you know, figure things out over time. You couldn't use irony there or sarcasm, but you had to know what the fuck you were talking about. I would also say that's the other thing. If I have an argument with somebody at my old job where they knew something that I didn't, I would be like, okay, I am not at all at the class of knowledge this person is at. And they seem really, really directed towards a particular goal. So what I need to do is learn more about what they're saying if I can. And if I can't, I'll go back on whatever goals I have and continue to push them forward and explain my goals. I've noticed with a lot of people, if you explain your goals, a lot of people will switch around and they'll start to say, okay, you know what? But if you're at a 7 or an 8 and somebody's just being a dick, I think that's when you definitely, if you're at work, you have to wonder why they're getting away with it. Because we had some pretty big controls at work where you're like, nah, I don't think so, man. Like, I don't think this is cool at work. No. If you're in your personal life, where are you? If you're at a party and you're never going to see the person again, great, whatever, walk away. If it's somebody in your personal life where you consistently, you just have to, I always have pretty set goals with what I need. Also, why argue about something that doesn't matter? So if they have goals like a political thing and they start talking about politics and people get mad at me because a lot of times I won't engage in politics because every single decision I make in life is looking at it. I don't swing right or left or center. It's like I could be over here on one thing and then dramatically over here on something else. I don't think that's something I really want to even talk about with somebody else. I don't think it's their business.
Yeah.
A lot of times. So, and you know me, I'm a free speech advocate. Otherwise I wouldn't be running the channel the way I do. Like there's certain things where I know I could do 10,000 times better if I changed some things. And I'm all, no, that's because it won't
I think it
fit with
depends a lot
goal.
on the person too,
it does.
Right? Because if it's someone, you know, like if I'm talking to you, I know you're coming from like a good place. It's not like you're trying to troll me or annoy me.
Right.
So then I have a lot of time for you to figure out what you're trying to say, where you're coming from and stuff. Whereas like some random person on the internet, I just have very little time for you. If you're coming in saying like, bro, you got no hair, like I got you. True, you know, but I'm not really going to spend energy getting into that.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I appreciate you asking it. Aurora Galaxy EGP 50. I don't know what that is. I apologize, but it's EGP, which sounds like Egyptian gold pieces.
Yeah.
We'll say it that way. 50 Egyptian gold pieces from Aurora Galaxy. Gold nuggets. Egyptian gold nuggets. I don't know what I don't know that monetary value. Love the podcast and your reviews, ACG. Keep up the awesome work. Much love and support all the way from Egypt. Oh, there we go. All right. Didn't see that, but that works for me. Tembo says uninterrupted eye contact. Yeah, that'll work, or hugs with your hips first. Those are for sure the ways to get out of conflict. Just stare. Just no movement. I will, like I've told you before, the only thing I ever get is that people say, like in personal discussions or whatever, that I look super intense. And I'll be like, man, I don't feel like, I don't feel like that's the way I come across.
Yeah, like murderous.
But yeah, I've had many people say like, holy shit, when we're in a meeting. And I'm like, I've told you before, I've warned you before, that if you're talking and there's something I'm not understanding, I will do the, I have to shit. And I guess a lot of people think that means Carrick wants to punch somebody. It's like, no, not at all. A lot of times you won't be able to tell if I'm mad because I'll just be like, okay. But if I'm really listening to you, I'll be like, and he wants to kill him. Like, no, actually, I'm very much listening. It's Pounds. Thank you very much. I do like gold pieces, though. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I like the idea of somebody having gold pieces in a bank somewhere that they give away for a podcast, the transfer of that physical gold piece. So I'm going to stick with that.
That would be immune to inflation, right? Technically, if it's literal gold pieces.
It'll go up and down via trade, but yeah, it's definitely going to be more useful in the long run. Even though technically, what is gold used for? It's been replaced in a lot of electronics, but in some electronics, fillings in the old days. Also, same person is asking, is there any new music you're listening to?
Nothing too much right now, actually. Last time we talked about, I was checking out Sleep Token.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of moved away from that a little bit now. I've been listening to quite a bit of Biffy Clyro, which is some folks from the UK. They got some really cool music.
I have randomly, because of YouTube, been listening to, I think it might be Rico Nasty, rapper / there's some guitar in there. It's a lady. I don't know exactly where she's from. She has a very Lady Gaga style in her videos. Very Lady Gaga. Even the fingernails, one of the videos, she's in a bathtub, like Bad Romance from Lady Gaga. And it's got a almost old style Kid Rock, Bull God kind of music to it. And it popped up in my YouTube shorts maybe 5 or 6 days ago. And that's popped up. Not necessarily the best rap at all, but I sort of dig the mix of the occasional hard rock and rap music mixed together. Yeah. I've always been a fan.
We talked about Linkin Park the other day, right? It's not really rapping, is it? Would you call that rapping?
During the middle parts, there's definitely rapping. There's no real other way to say it.
Light rapping or whatever.
Yeah. But good question.
Yeah.
Moving on back to games. So I want to just hit this real quick. FTC dropped the case over Microsoft's $69 billion with a capital bill Activision Blizzard deal. Ooh. The FTC has decided to drop its legal challenge against Microsoft's deal acquisition. That must have sucked, because I assume they always knew at some point it would be dropped, and the idea of how much money you're wasting and stuff like that for these people to go after you. But it got dropped. I'm not feeling bad for Microsoft. I'm literally just saying, even as an employee dealing with it, just being like, oh, come on. But they did drop it. It was the largest ever deal where they assumed there was harm for competition, and they have decided that this time it's not within the public interest.
So there's no harm
to chase it. Well, they just said it's not within their interest. So it's sort of like saying, you're a shithead, but I don't want to kill you. It's like,
but I think
sort of still come across. I'm just saying they still sort of come across as it's bad, but they're not going to follow it anymore. They're not going to track it.
Okay. But they didn't get like a slap on the wrist even, right?
No, but years and years of being stymied in courts.
Okay. That qualifies as a
lawyer
slap
fees,
on the wrist.
High millions, man. Super high millions. The other thing I want to mention that came and went, not quite sure why, but whatever, and I wanted to talk about it. Avowed's director Carrie Patel left Obsidian for Night School Studio at Netflix. So that's the Oxenfree devs. They also did After Party. That is a shock to me. She's been there for ages, which isn't the shock. It's the fact that a lot of people, have sort of stuck around with Obsidian. She left, and, I looked at Netflix's game division news recently, and they've done nothing but cut. But The one thing I do want to point out, because people are like, why would that person leave? Listen, Netflix's wage, at least from what I'm hearing from people who work at Netflix, is very good. And at some point, it might be nice if like a Netflix says, hey, the amount of money that you made Avowed with is the cost of our stamps. And we don't even use stamps much anymore because Netflix is throwing around a lot of cash for certain things. So whatever they got her to do, she's working with them. I actually love Oxenfree 1, Oxenfree 2, a little less, but still very happy to see that. But I also was pretty shocked because I guess I just didn't expect that. It was sort of news that came and went, and no one really, it didn't seem to get really covered too much, especially with Avowed now doing well enough that Obsidian has talked about possible DLC or something. But yeah, so Carrie left. Wish her luck. I actually think she did a great job explaining Avowed, even though I wasn't a huge fan of the story and stuff. I actually think that that game does a lot of stuff right. A lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think directing chops wise, I'm going to look forward to whatever those guys do, because maybe we're going to look at, I don't know. Do we get more money for an Oxenfree 3 or, because her name, like, that's a big name. They for them at least. So
yeah.
The other one,
it's a big investment. And just one last thing to say there is, I don't begrudge anybody taking a fat check.
Me neither.
Because the industry is really rough, man. And even people in like prominent positions like her might not really have a great pay. Especially if you've been around for quite a while in a company, your pay has actually kind of gone down over time compared to what is being paid in the market for your level. So just to give an example, I'm a lead software engineer in my job. If I was to go to a different company right now, I would for sure get a better salary rate than what I have at my present company.
Right.
Because it's been, of course, I get raises over time, but it's still trailing behind where the market is, because the market is just very competitive and salaries are going up continually.
Absolutely agreed.
Yeah.
It is weird though that, especially when you look at games and the contraction of games and you look at the money, finally people are starting to talk about it, because like Reg brought this up almost 3 years ago, where on the podcast where he was like, hey, AI money is not going to go into games if everybody in games is fighting AI money. And there's a little bit of a stymie there, a disagreement currently, because there's so much money that people are putting forward. And now that investment money that would go to AI and games as well as AI separately has really just gone to AI and LLMs and all that, and is left gaming. The big, the actual investment is more difficult to come by for games. So when somebody says, hey, I'm going to work for Netflix, I'm like, okay, makes sense. Sometimes you have to, that's also us pretending that she didn't have a great offer to create the next big masterpiece game she wanted to do, which is also what people forget, is that, that company might be more open with spending on something that she wants to do. Like we saw with Sawyer doing Pentiment. Obsidian they didn't let him, it sounds like he really was pretty forceful. He really wanted to do Pentiment, and Pentiment is a game that only like 10 people are going to like. I'm just joking, but you get my drift. That is a specific game.
Talking about niches from before.
Yeah, that shit's crazy. So that's really cool, man. I have no issue with that. I think it's awesome. Next up, so Embracer Group. Dude. So they were talking, they did their little announcement, and they basically, this is Wingafor, who I know people don't like, but he's the guy who still runs Embracer Group. They had all the issues. They bought all the companies. That sort of went south. To continue inflow of cash, what they're doing is they do have some AAA games as well as some AA games coming out, but they stated one of the things that they are going to do is look at way more remasters and remakes. So I wanted your take on this. Let me explain the take that is it's not confusing me, because the internet isn't one person, but let me explain what I'm hearing, and then I want to see what you think, Johnny. For years and years, the general consensus was we don't want remakes or remasters because they're not a new thing. And yet, some of the heavy hitters this year and last year and the year before were remakes and remasters.
Yeah.
So, do you see this as not a bad thing because that's putting you in an unfair spotlight? But when you look at something like this, are you okay with remakes and remasters in this way? And understanding the business is business, you got to keep people employed. And so, if a new game is 200 million and 5 remakes done well might be that same amount.
Yeah.
Like,
I think there's also a mitigation of risk with remakes, which is even though people bitch,
right?
Like a lot of them will still buy it because they liked the original game.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you say, well, this game is great, it doesn't need a remake, I would imagine a big proportion of those people still will buy the remake. You know,
right.
we saw that a lot with Resident Evil, where people said, oh, you know, the original is still a great game, didn't need a remake. And guess what? A lot of those people still bought and really liked the remakes. Same with Silent Hill.
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty. I think at the end of the day, those work. Like, just from a business standpoint.
Yeah.
Right? Because if the original was a success and there's like a reasonable production, you know, making it like a good product on its own, let's say, I think generally it just works. I'm trying to think back to any remakes that really flopped, and I'm just struggling to think of a single remake that was really terrible, you know, in terms of like success or reception. I think they tend to do pretty well generally.
As long as the money's put into them, I'm sure somebody in chat is going to know of like 15.
We might know, games, there might be some counter examples, but I think when you look at it overall, they are a pretty safe bet.
Not only that, but let me point out something that is sort of, in a weird way, cynical, but I'm sure a lot of people who are working on Concord would have rather had a remake of some kind to work on with an ingrained audience.
Sure. Yeah.
And see success than see their game pulled. But that's pretending one for one, which is not real. But I'm just saying, I do see where he's coming from, and I see that they, in particular, have a lot of IPs that they're sitting on that are not represented at all, even in backwards compatibility. They have some that don't have backwards compatibility patches. You'll hear people saying Windows 10 and 11 don't let them run the game, you know, because you get those weird offset games that maybe they had some weird sign-in requirement or they're just not compatible. So seeing those remade or remastered, yeah, I would agree. I think, in all honesty, it's okay to say that it's not the devil you know. I don't want to say it that way, but I think when you look at it, it's okay to say that those type of titles may not entice you too much, but they're a part of the business you do day to day. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, especially if they're still making a new one here or there and they're using it the way I did in Game Dev Story when I was playing on my phone. I was a port company and then would occasionally make my AAA side game because it cost more. So I'd do ports on this side and then I would jump over, you know, and do my AAA.
Yeah.
And that makes sense, you know.
It's also not an either or. It's not like you get to decide like, hey, we're going to either, like you say, make a new game or spend the same money on a remake. Those are not, because sometimes there's a possibility for the remake, but there's no possibility for a completely new IP.
Absolutely. By the way, thank you. That is so fucking true. Yeah. When you hear somebody say, why are they not making a new game? And it's like, because a new game would not be made.
It's not a thing. It's not a business track for the studio, you know, like, and then, and that reminds me what happens with like science projects, just a quick like comparison. Because we see like, oh, why'd you spend so much money on insert whatever science project you can think of, like the Collider, right? Mm-hmm. In Geneva. Oh, why'd you spend so much money on that? You could have spent it on X. You're assuming that like it was those two things on the table.
Right.
But no, there was this track and it was going to be either this project or nothing else, or it was going to go to, some completely different thing. It's not like you had perfectly two things placed on the table to kind of choose from.
Dude, I can only tell you from the jobs I've worked at, usually when you're in your thinking phase, you probably have 40 ideas. Not 2, not 5, not 10, but you're breaking down so many things of like, do we do a new version of this software? Do we just change over the database to the new type that, is compatible with some security thing? Do we absolutely leave that part of the industry? Which I've been in those discussions, which are even worse, where it's like, do we do A, B, C, or Q, which is where we eject and maybe we try, we take what we've learned and we enter a completely different part of the segment where, there might be some growth there, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly hate Dead Rising Remaster. Oh, interesting. Colin Bright says, hey, Carrick and Johnny and chat. What's up, Colin? Hope you're doing well. Hope you're getting some games played. Next up, Warhammer. Dude, a lot of games for Warhammer got announced, including was Bolt Gun 2. But
yeah,
I don't hear you talk much about Warhammer. Does any of this kind of stuff, I'm going to let this dog out real quick. Does any of this kind of stuff for Warhammer, I think you have a list there of the 3 or 4 games that were announced. I could be, and plus there were some DLC classes for 1 or 2 other games. Does Warhammer, does it get you hot, man? I mean, I know you played Space Marine, but do you like sit up late at night going, this is the persona for me, or do you care? I'll be back in 30 seconds.
So I'm more so new to the whole 40K universe, so I've been enjoying learning more about it through the lens of the game and a couple of stories that I've been listening to in Audible. So I'm pretty new to it and open to jumping into more and more stuff from it. I think that everything that I've played so far from Warhammer, which has been the Total War game, then Dark Tide, and now recently Space Marine 2, I've had a really good impression about the 40K universe. I think it's interesting, it's grim, it's unforgiving, but there's also loyalty amongst like friends, and there is some sense of like self-sacrifice and stuff like that those themes really speak to me. So I think there's a lot cool there to explore and a lot of mystery, a lot of plot lines I'd like to see. I'd like to learn more about the Emperor and things like that through games. So I'm excited for it. And I think that the success we saw with Space Marine 2...
Sorry.
What are you up to, man?
I sat back down and my ass ate the camera. Continue.
My
ass ate the camera. It sounds like an OnlyFans thing. So I was looking at the Steam description for some Warhammer games. You mentioned something I want to... So let me... Let me read something to you that I think is quite telling on how Warhammer stuff works. Let me go to description. Okay, nope, it's not that one. It must be... What's the other ones? Warhammer, what were the other games mentioned?
So we had Dark Heresy, Supremacy, and there was also... I think it was a special edition of the prior Space Marine game.
Listen to this.
And then
this is for Dark
there's
Heresy,
a new
Johnny.
class for Dark Tide and more stuff.
Listen to this. The developers describe the content like this. This is why I love Warhammer. The game contains scenes and text some people may find disturbing. They are not graphically detailed and presented from an isometric point of view, and most of them occur episodically. However, we considered our duty to inform our players about it. You may see depictions of blood, gore, dismemberment, torture, slavery, kidnapping. It also contains textual descriptions and mentions of abuse, child abuse, sexual assault, self-harm, suicide, cannibalism, and miscarriage. Player discretion is advised. Here's why I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it because it is a game. It is a part of fiction. It is just like any book you could, read, like, 60 Shades of Grey or whatever, how many ever shades, I can't remember the name of that, where there was, sadomasochism and BDSM in it. This one goes a little farther, right? Because it's Warhammer. Warhammer is grimdark for a reason. Warhammer makes a lot of other dark or supposedly dark shows appear quite light in how it deals with stuff. But I'm all for it, man. I'm all for it because I want to see how the developers continually discuss those things or show those things without, becoming too gratuitous, but also showing the Warhammer lore, which is dark. It's the same thing that the World of Darkness games had going for them, where they were super dark. And I know that now we've turned against it a little bit. And we can't do this and we can't do that. And I'm like, sometimes I want a bad guy to be bad, like almost that instinctual desire to choke them out personally if I ever met that character. So I'm okay with it. I'm actually really excited for these. And like you said, I know you're just seeing it under this lens, but I lived through the Games Workshop terrible IP days where their stuff was drivel, it was shit, it was unacceptably bad, it was altogether a bad dark period for them in game development, and they turned it around. They've sort of gone back and forth, good then bad, then I think mostly good, then now great overall. The more the merrier, man. Let's eat some kids. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah,
just
I don't
saying,
know about that
if
one.
If the kid's in the game, can you eat him? It's a smaller bite. Maybe it's a big guy and he just needs a snack. Eat that kid.
It's funny how that list you were mentioning of those are like all the bad things that have ever, like, I don't know. It's just a collection of all bad things we've seen in literature, history, everything. It's in there.
Dude, Rogeri says Mechanicus was great.
Oh, yeah. So Mechanicus 2 is kind of like an XCOM.
Yes, I saw that.
Style. Yeah, that looked good too.
I'm excited for it, man. I say the more the merrier in Warhammer, especially if we get a little normalized to games, like Baldur's Gate showing some stuff, Warhammer showing some stuff, being like, hey, people are adults. I do think that the continual thing where it's like everybody needs to take care of us and we don't need to parent or we don't need to control our own buying purchases or whatever is it's now old fashioned to think that, which it used to be the new. But I think now we're starting to get to the point to where it's like we can't continually pretend like we have free will, we're able to go out and get what we want and control, and we're going to put our foot down and then turn around and be like, oh my God, I didn't realize this game had this. It's like a lot of these games are doing a pretty good job showing the stuff. So, explain it up front. Hey, this is some questionable shit. So be prepared. I'm all for it, man. At least so far. I haven't seen anything terrible. Hey, if they do something that's really like, you're just sitting there going, this seems like torture porn, I'll bring it up. But so far with Warhammer, I haven't seen that.
No.
I think, in fact, GTA 5 may have been a good primer for what people... There was 2 scenes in GTA 5. I'm not going to get into them because people are just jumping into the enhanced version, but there's 2 or 3 things... People are going to say there's more, but I think there's 2 or 3 things in GTA 5 in particular that when you play them, you're like, damn, seriously, they showed that in a third person. These guys at least say this is isometric. They go out of their way to tell you that the viewpoint is detached, which I also want to say now, thank you for those guys saying it, because when I bring that up in a review, somebody no, it's not detached. Yes, it is. It's quite literally detached. That's one of the reasons why they feel safer delivering it in that form.
Yeah.
Because it is science. I mean, you just look at the science of it. It is detached.
Yeah.
It is more detached.
Well, even third person, it's closer, but you're seeing like the character do it.
Body.
You're not in the... Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, GTA 5, when they added that first person, man, you start punching people. You're like, ooh, that changes the...
Yeah.
That changes that feel a little bit. Yeah, Warhammer, anybody interested in any other Warhammer games? I'm sure we missed one, I think. But yeah, so a bunch got announced. There was Dawn of War, a remaster, which I saw a lot of excitement about that. I think a lot of people didn't know that they were looking forward to that. It's a remaster, not a remake. Be aware of that. Dark Heresy, and then new CRPG, and then Bolt Gun sequel.
And the Siege mode for...
And Siege mode for Space Marine 2.
In June. Yeah.
You gonna return to that?
I might. Yeah, I really like the game.
I really liked it too, but I find it hard to go back to. Were you?
Well, it is. Yeah.
Was it you and me and Cyanide? No, it was Amutski, Cyanide, and myself. We returned to it. I had a really good time. Maybe I just need a little bit more distance, is all. But yeah.
Yeah.
And then real quick, some Xbox stuff. Game Bar is being improved. Game Bar has already been massively improved. I'm quite surprised how much improved it is, because that's a program I would delete the moment I put a new Windows service on a machine.
It was always the first thing. You go in, turn off Game Bar.
OneDrive, and Game Bar would be either I would install a version of Windows without them, or using like one of the installers, or I would delete them right away. But the other cool thing that people seem to miss with the announcement of the classic games, which is very cool, we'll talk about that in a second, is that GeForce Now streaming is available inside the Xbox PC app. So if the game is on GeForce and you go in, you can click the GeForce app and stream via the GeForce versus the PC stuff, which I thought was really cool, and just goes to show, what did we say? Like, until they can figure out their cloud stuff, GeForce Now has had all these day one games on it. It just seems to me...
Is that coming out on the consoles too? On Xbox?
So the consoles can do it, or could do it. I haven't checked it in a while. They could do it through Edge or the browser that was on the Xbox, where you could load the browser and play games. I was asked that actually by the guys, the Tress brothers. They were on Twitter going, wait, can you play our game via... And I was all, you know what? It's been a while. I don't want to say you for sure can. But you used to be able to play games that had the proper controller support via the browser on the Xbox. I just haven't done it in a while. But I think GeForce Now is on the Xbox anyway now. Could be wrong. Anybody in chat, can you remember that? Or can you check? Because it's been a while since
that
I've
would
had
be
to do
cool
that.
if it's integrated, natively.
Yeah,
in the console.
For sure. And then the other thing is they added retro classics. So 50 Activision old games. And when I mean old, I just want to make sure we're really clear on how old these games are. There's some ancient ass games there. There's some newer ones, but they basically took a bunch of Activision titles that were classics and put them on the Xbox. And I believe it downloads the older ROMs into an emulator. I can't remember. I saw some people talking about how it's done, and I admit I haven't checked it to see how they're doing those the classics deliveries, but quite excited to see that. I mean, they're old though. Like, I don't know. Do you go back to these ancient crusty ass games? I don't think I do either. It's not really for me. It's cool that it's there, but I'm not going to go play Pitfall probably. Like, that's Atari 2600. Like, that's some ancient ass stuff. Space Marine 1 is coming to Game Pass, Wizard says. Ooh, good for them. Fighting Dog says Owlcat is goated. The amount of content they put out. They are a really messed up goat, but I will agree they're goated. They're messed up because they also release some of the buggiest fucking games known to man. So they are a goat that has had a lot of head injury. A lot of head injury. Because damn. If you've played an Owlcat game, you've probably experienced some game-killing bugs. Damn.
But I think either way, so that's on Game Pass, is it? All those games, the catalog?
The old catalog, yep.
Yeah. That's cool to see too, because when you compare that to PlayStation's service, I'm hoping that they will kind of see that and get their shit together, because they've been a bit lax. And I'm not like pro PlayStation or Xbox. I'm kind of agnostic there. I don't have a dog in that fight. But I think objectively their PS Plus premium service has been quite lackluster. Like, if you look at it, I think this month's edition is one single game that's called Battle Engine Aquila. And it would surprise me if you know what the game is, because honestly, I don't. I had to look it up. But
it's for sure an anime game, right? Because that is the name of an anime.
I mean, it has to be. That's what it sounds like. But I mean, I'm sure. Look, I'm not shitting on the game. I'm sure it's a fine game, but the point is, like, it's not meaningful additions, right? And they've had some of these kind of classic games come out too for the streaming service, but they've come out very slowly. So we've had like a couple of Armored Core older games to mention, and I think Alone in the Dark maybe. So there've been a couple cool ones, but it's been very slow. Right. And so, yeah, I would like to see them bump up the throughput in their service.
I'll claim not knowing on that one, because I think I have the service, but I haven't turned on my console in a long time. That particular console, except to replay the occasional game. But a lot of them are coming on PC as remasters, so I can just
Yeah.
jump onto the PC. I played I can't remember. I played a remaster here recently on their machine.
Last of Us, maybe? No.
No, I don't remember what it was, but I did play one. I did turn it on because I had to do the thing where you turn it on. It's like, you know, you have 18 gigs of updates, and that's how you know you've had it off for a while. John Martin,
Yeah.
$5 super chat. Good afternoon, gentlemen. What's up, Mr. Martin? Hope you're doing well, getting some gaming in. Thanks for joining us. Dylan says PS Premium is crazy expensive too. I don't know how expensive it is, but I believe you. Because I want to talk about something else. Dude, in the last 3 weeks, I turned off a card to get a new credit card, and I was getting a list of all of the stuff that was hitting that old credit card that I had subscribed to. First of all, way too much. Like, I'm saving a good deal each month now by doing this because I didn't even remember some of these. But I also started getting some alerts from subscriptions that I have that are raising dramatically. I mean, hugely, including Adobe. They are packaged in stuff so that you really basically have to get it. And if you don't, it's restricting a ton of stuff in whatever app you're using. And it is dramatically rising. I think Google's is rising. I know when I was trying to use some stuff yesterday, it was like, get Google, I can't remember what it's called, like Google Plus, which is did I disappear?
Yes.
Okay,
it creeped the crap out of me.
So I was getting Google. Oh, you know why? Because the app is thinking I'm talking to it on my phone.
Okay.
Let's see if this goes. But anyway, so it rose dramatically to the point to where just completely unrealistic to get. So do you have any subscriptions that you have turned off recently? Like that you've
Oh yeah, I've been tracking down everything I had, especially for like on-demand video stuff like Netflix, Disney, all this stuff.
Mm.
And I'm trying to actively cycle them, so I'll have like 1 or 2 max active, and then at the end of the month I'll look at it and see, you know, am I still watching something there, or am I ready to cycle to a different one? Because there's always new stuff coming out, and it will be coming out on different services. So
yeah,
it adds up very, very quickly.
Wish I could use that excuse. Mine were a bunch of things I forgot they weren't even show stuff, because you know me, I like to watch shows when I'm working or whatever. So yeah, I was
Definitely
surprised.
I've had that too.
And it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was not a small amount that I do not need a subscription for. But what pissed me off was going and looking and finding just how many are raising dramatically. And you could say tariffs. I don't know if that's, you know, what I'm using is mostly digital products. I don't know if that's why. What I was going to say is that particular website called Alphabet, making sure my phone doesn't turn on, there we go, is raising the price of their package. And I already pay for their packages separately, and I've already paid different amounts, some monthly, some yearly. And they're like, well, why don't you do it all at one time? And I don't know if they cancel those others or if I'm going to have overlapping, you know. And so what they did was, the thing that pisses me off is they went back to a bunch of apps I do use, and they're restricting those if you don't have this new subscription. And this is Alphabet. This isn't Adobe doing this. This is also Alphabet. And I was looking at it last night with a mood ski going like, God damn, man, and it's not a small amount of money. Listen to this. Per month, if you get Alphabet One, I think is what, $124. Now, that's not that crazy for a second when you add in that it includes Google Drive having 30 terabytes, which they give you, and they give you stuff that I have paid for as a business. And I don't know if I pay that much a month. It's probably a little bit. But after 3 months, unless Amutski was playing with me, because I was doing some when he was reading this to me, I think it goes up to like $199. It's ridiculous. Like, I was looking at that price.
Crazy.
So if I'm wrong on that, feel free to correct me, guys. But I'm pretty sure Amutski wasn't lying when he was reading. He was like, dude, it's not $124 a month after like 3 months. I was like, wait, what? Does it go down? He's like, no, nothing goes down, which is true.
Yes.
I don't know why I thought it would go down.
We're seeing that trend where we're now paying way more. So you look at these services, and they sometimes have a cheaper tier now compared to before. For example, Netflix has an ad tier where you see ads, but you pay cheaper.
Yeah.
But the price of that is actually more expensive than what Netflix was some time ago.
Right.
So it's just kind of just shifted the goalpost to where now if you want to have the same service you had, you have to pay more. And the
Right.
same for Prime Video, right? Now if you want without ads, you also have to pay the extra.
Prepare for Xbox to have it.
And you have all this type of stuff happening. And it reminds me of that Black Mirror episode, the first one in the new season, where they have the brain implant thing, and they have the subscription tier, and it keeps jumping. So now there's a new subscription tier, and if you want to hold on to what you had before, you're on this new tier, and it's amazing. It's gonna be great. And then guess what? Sometime later, there's a new tier, and now you're in the shit tier. So yeah, it just
prepare for Xbox to have an ads version for sure. I don't know if they'll remove or lower so that you can do it for free and just do ads. I don't know what's going on there, but I feel pretty comfortable saying that's for sure headed our way. I wouldn't doubt if PlayStation does.
I mean, at least there's the option. I don't begrudge the option of like having ads. I think for some people, that's a good alternative. It's just that the continuous escalation in price is really worrying.
Upload covered that as well. Upload's one of my favorite shows for showing like what the future could look like with digital, a digital future. And that's what they do, is get you to like something at $49 a month or whatever. And then they'll be like, it's now 100, but don't worry, you won't lose anything. You'll still have the basic services, blah, blah, blah. And you find out your avatar, looks like it's just a digital fake avatar now and not you anymore. By the way, the other company that's doing this, mark my words, for sure, this absolutely is happening, and it's causing me no end of lack of sleep, and that's Discord. Because currently on Discord, it just runs. There isn't this overhead that's going on, and they are absolutely going public. And when they do, I guarantee you're going to have to pay for server usage or something as the creator. Because Midjourney, for example, has, I think, over 1 million Discord followers. Imagine a stream. Imagine the amount of money that's going on. Even if you do Nitro, even if you do whatever, we know how much it costs to serve something and what they're doing with their, where you can do multi-streams and watch a bunch of people stream. Discord, Xbox, they're definitely going that way. What I don't like is the ads and money versions. I don't know why, but I'm like, why would I pay any money? But then you do see the non-paid one, and the ads are egregious. So,
well, dude, remember they were selling TVs at a cheaper price because they had like ads built in or something?
Oh, into the taskbar or into the main bar. Yeah, they did have that. I forgot.
Dude, that was crazy.
Settle down, folks. Carrick's getting a firmware update. Oh, when my phone when I disappeared. Wizard says Game Pass is getting a bunch of sim games, also Police Sim, Firefighter Sim, Spray Paint Sim. They also have Police Simulator Sim or whatever, because I know I saw Solar playing it. So, yeah, we'll just have to see how all that pans out. Here's a question from behind the scenes. As Tom Cruise vows to continue making movies into his hundreds, what does this say about the evolving nature of stardom and longevity in Hollywood? First of all, I want to say thank you for asking a question that's just completely random, but still encapsulates that I love myself some Tom Cruise running.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Dude, I think deep Indiana Jones changing an old person to look young is absolutely going to continue, especially as they're bankable names, regardless of what they look like outside of the movie. Like a Harrison Ford as a young Indiana Jones versus a new Indiana Jones. They're not the greatest movies anymore, but I still think his name matters. It's a remake. What we are watching right now with deep fakes and fixing people is the remakes and remastering of the person to be in the new movie.
Sure.
I mean, that's really what's going on. So I don't see
like what we saw in Benjamin Button or some of these movies.
What's The Irishman is the other one, where all of the gangster style actors who've done your De Niro's and stuff were all CGI'd to look younger so that they could play themselves.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that, by the way. I mean, you're compensating the actor, and it's not like you're
not stealing their name,
stealing anything,
or their voice or anything. Yeah,
right.
I do find it.
Yeah, I'm totally down.
Maybe a little sad because maybe we won't see newer actors have as much space. That's, I guess, a little bit of my worry. is
if
a new
that's
Indiana
true,
Jones actor kind of thing.
If these, that's true, because what you have right now is that at least these big names eventually fade out as they enter, old age, right?
Yeah.
So you stop seeing whatever Liam Neeson in every movie.
Yeah.
As an example. But if they're able to outlast their own longevity via digital means, then you might even end up having these names that are just ever present.
Yeah.
Like you're having Taken movies being made 30 years from now, still with Liam Neeson's likeness. And
Taken 7, and it's just him looking
I
for
will
his old body.
Find you, and
Yeah.
I will. Yeah,
I have a particular set of
I
skills.
will continue
to make myself look younger. Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One. What he meant was Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One, but now I like the idea of calling him Grand Moff Tarkin.
Grand Moff.
And then also, James Earl Jones as Darth Vader in Fortnite. That's all sort of exploded this week in game news. I like that Grand Moff Tarkin. That's what I'm gonna call him from now on. That is what we're seeing though, is sort of a remake or a remastering of actors. So good question. And honestly, I see the way Johnny does. I see it the exact same. It's just going to continue, and age-wise, those guys will stick around until they can't. Do you know what we haven't seen? So let's turn this on its ear a little bit. So let's go with, we could say Ellen Barkin. Let's go with Helen Mirren. Helen Mirren is 60 plus. Helen Mirren was known as a sex symbol for many years. How do you feel about Helen Mirren's face CGI'd to look younger on Sydney Sweden's body for a movie where Helen Mirren's voice is like injected so that it's a body double, basically?
Yeah.
But the sex symbol part will be very interesting, because with the guys, it's usually about action or the drama. But if you get Ellen Barkin, I'm trying to think of older female actresses you get who haven't aged in the same way as like a,
Kate Beckinsale
or something. Yeah. So getting them in a sex scene or whatever, that's going to be quite weird. I wonder if they'll steer clear of that, because at some point as an actor, if it's my body on screen and I'm buff and I've been working out, I'd be like, what the fuck, man? He's putting, I don't know, he's putting like Tom Cruise's face on my body. But as a woman and the way sex symbols are done, it'd be quite interesting to see if sex symbols continue, because you will look so dramatically different in real life. Like, look at Harrison Ford in a movie, even before CGI, all the makeup, you'd see him and you'd be like, okay. And then you'd see him doddering, crashing planes into parks and shit. And he's doddering around with his old man bad back because he's already got the old man hunch. And then you're like, ooh, he's old. And then a new Indiana Jones gets announced and you're like, okay, I'm going to that Indiana Jones. So there's a dichotomy there of like what we see and if we'll care. Yeah. I don't know, man.
Maybe I'm wrong in this, but I don't view it differently than animation. So when somebody lends their voice to an animated character, if we have now a kind of a digitally enhanced or created avatar for them, I think I'm good with that.
I think I am too. I'll just have to see more of how it all pans out when it comes to, especially like how everybody deals. I do want new actors, just like new game developers. You get a new game developer who comes along, and then an older developer like a Bethesda announces Obsidian. And so you're like, announces Oblivion. And you're like, damn, they sort of, because they're known and have a name. Speaking of known and have a name, dude, Helldivers 2 exploded again. God damn. That game was sort of on the ebb for me. I wouldn't hear about it for multiple days. I wouldn't like hear people talking about it. And then they did that massive update, which people are raving about. And I got to admit, man, I still haven't got on the Helldivers joint. Every time somebody passes it to me, I'm like, I don't smoke that Helldivers shit. I still haven't played it yet. I mean, I played a little bit, but I still haven't like dived in. So have you jumped in at all to Helldivers? No,
I jumped in when it came out and played a fair bit, but I haven't come back to it. No.
Dude,
I
it's
don't know,
exploding.
man. I haven't felt the. So what did they add? They added a new faction.
Yeah, and what Silver, I don't know if it's a new faction. Silver was saying it's just more interactivity in one of the maps, I think, as well, where like you could see more stuff happening. People in chat can, by all means, pipe off on Helldivers because I don't track it as much. But the stuff I have been reading is like a bunch more fiction. It might be a new enemy type, but overall, it seems to me like the changes and everything they've done has just added more functionality to the game as a whole, which, by the way, obviously, that's exactly what we would want.
So just checking this out in PC Gamer.
Go for it.
Helldivers new update, Heart of Democracy finally adds urban city maps.
That's what it was. Thank you. Yeah.
SEAF red shirts to make you look cool. Giant illuminate sky worms. And civilians to protect from friendly fire. Okay, that does look cool. Just watching the video here.
A lot of immersion in that is what I'm hearing. Is that it feels like they added like the feel of immersion. Kel says Super Earth's been invaded by the squids. The fighting has been savage, and riding an orbital cannon shot to a Leviathan while arming your backpack nuke is fantastic. Dude, they did a good job.
Okay, honestly, dude, yeah, the setting, like the city setting that I'm seeing here, looks really cool.
Looks fantastic, like, doesn't it?
Looks like EDF, but like good.
Yeah, sorry, EDF fans. Gonna suck that down. Helldivers 2 is an example of a live service game done right. It's all about fun and balance. Be damned. Good mentality.
Damn.
Well, yeah. I don't know if balance be damned, because I thought that there was a post or two or a patch or two where they really fucked up balance. Maybe they've stepped away or stepped back on that. Yeah. I don't know, but yeah. Dude, it looks good. The stuff people were talking about in chat, it seems like the cool thing about Helldivers as well is that, yes, a lot of it's mechanics, but the fiction seems to have, like, for example, somebody was talking about, it's time to save or it's time to liberate, blah, blah, blah. And I know that sounds weird, but the fact that people put it in chat years later, instead of saying, well, technically the railgun is +2 to damage. Yeah. Instead, they're all, oh, man, yeah, I did this. There's a narrative to it that I love.
Yeah, it's kind of become pervasive, right?
Yeah.
Some of the cultural stuff.
Yeah, they've done a great job on it, man. Like, and that game launched, it had some issues. Like, it had all the problems with the accounts and stuff. So, I don't want to say another game saved itself, because I think that game was really good day one mechanically.
Yeah, it was pretty solid.
Or pretty good. Yeah.
It's good to see.
Dude, it's awesome. It's just, do you feel the complexity pushes you back? Is like, I don't want to get in there,
honestly.
And I feel that in there now, and fuck over liberty.
Fuck over, like let everybody down tremendously.
Yeah.
Because like I fuck up my combo, like the combination
God, the button combo.
Especially under pressure, Under pressure, dude.
Yeah, well, I don't remember if they have solar or solo stuff, because I think solo stuff would help, little training montages you could go through.
So you could play solo, but I think the difficulty was the same. So you were
I would like a training thing so that you could train on that. Yeah. Like, even if it was a Dance Dance Revolution thing where they're like, do you want to use this nuke? Well, here's a testing page, and you're just up, down, left, A, B, 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 A, and you can sort of get it to muscle memory.
I did like the combos, though. It just feels that to come back to that game, you need a whole, like, retraining.
Yeah.
It's not a game I can jump back into easily. For example, Space Marine 2, I feel like I could jump in and like play that out decently after a mission, just remembering the controls and stuff.
Yeah.
But Helldivers just is overwhelming, I think, by design, because it is that layered learning where mission after mission, you're learning one more interaction, one more thing that works or doesn't.
They've done a great job with it, man. Yeah. I mean, people seem to always, even when they're not, sorry, I got to take
it's just always in the conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is it just seems like even if there are issues, people want to continue playing it. There's not the, okay, they did this, we're done. It's all, people I saw someone, for sure, but
someone created a prop, like, thing on like a bracelet on the arm where you can tap the combo, like as if it's like a Starship Troopers type thing.
You were gonna say they tattooed, because the way you're pointing at your arm.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised at all either if somebody's got, the nuke tattoo or whatever one of the big weapons has like the tattoo of the command on it, which, by the way, is not the worst gaming tattoo I've ever seen. I've seen some Assassin's Creed tattoos that look fucking horrendous. So if you want to do a Helldivers tattoo, that's awesome. Do you have tattoos, Johnny?
No. Never felt inclined to.
No?
No, not really, because I can't think of a single imagery thing that I would want
forever
permanently on my body, because like everything that I like, it just comes in phases. So even stuff that I thought really cool like 2 years ago, now I might look at it and think like, probably don't want that on my, ass cheek or whatever. Like,
if you go back 10 years and you have any kind of ability to look at messages, or you go back 20 and somebody's got a VCR tape of you fucking before cell phones and you said something you thought was cool.
Yeah.
And now you're like, damn, thank God, Metallica forever or whatever. I don't know. But you know what I mean? Yeah, you got to.
Yeah.
You can burn them off. But I mean, at that point, then it sort of seems weird anyway. But yeah. Legend says beneath Carrick's beanie is another beanie. That is true. It's actually a tattooed beanie.
It's beanies all the way down.
When it comes to tattoos, I've seen some ones I really like, but I've always found it, like you said, temporary, where I love the idea of it.
Yeah.
And there's now websites. One of our local place here has a website that lets you go and see your tattoo. You take pictures and it shows you virtually what your tattoo would look like. And I think that's tremendous. Yeah. However, even to this day, you have fucked up tattoos. And my wife had one where she went to the tattoo artist. Everybody got everything explained, thought she knew what she was getting, and was completely unhappy with the tattoo and had to go somewhere else to have it fixed. That, if you get a giant tattoo of Whistler's mother on your back taking a shit, it's going to be a while before you turn that into an Assassin's Creed hood. That's going to be a lot of ink, or burn it off, like I said. Some of KCD2 people are getting tattoos. Of what? I'm assuming he says
like
Kingdom
Henry?
Come Deliverance.
Just have like Henry's face on your chest.
On like on your pec. Just Henry staring at you every time you dry off and you look in the mirror. That seems odd. I don't think I would like that.
No.
Yeah, tattoos are a different one. Tattoos are something that you would really have to do. Finding a good tattoo artist is the most important part. Yeah, and everybody fucks up. The only problem is that's permanent. So you get that one day where the person was off, just didn't deliver their best job. Suddenly, looks like Brock Lesnar's on your back. And you're like, damn, this is not the tattoo I wanted.
Yeah.
Moving on from there to more game news. Did you hear this shit about NVIDIA and all the review stuff? So Game Nexus, they did, Steve did a breakdown of what they've been dealing with, in particular around the 5060 and the performance on that, and basically being told exactly what they can say or what they should say during reviews. And then there were some issues where I don't know how this goes, and I don't want to speak for him. Nice guy. He's a couple times I talked to him, he's been very nice. So I don't want to speak out of turn on what they're doing, but it sounds like maybe sometimes if somebody doesn't get a card, maybe they give it to somebody else to review as well. He said something to that effect in that video, and I was like, that seems like that would be against NDA. At least for us, like if I get a code, I can't let you play it, right? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
But ultimately, it was more about NVIDIA leaning on people, especially because the reviews weren't day one. And when that finally came out, leaning on people to only cover the card in a very particular way, to show very particular performance.
Right, so they wanted a big focus on the multi-frame generation aspect, right? And like showing specific charts and things like comparisons for that. And I think Steve, his angle was that wasn't a good comparison, because it was something inherent to the new generation, and it's not like apples to apples comparison.
Some
which
games
I think
don't
is
support
fair.
it correctly.
Right. And also that's the prerogative or should be of the outlet to say, do we think this is a good chart to show? Do we think this is a good comparison or not? And they were allegedly threatening to cut off certain contacts from NVIDIA that were like engineers that used to talk with Gamers Nexus to give information and stuff. So it's definitely pretty damning.
And it's also quite weird because they're like number one. You know, they're doing quite well when it comes to their sales, even if their cards, you know, have issues
so
with
technically
drivers,
they
like,
wouldn't have to do this type of stuff.
It sounds like old school mafia trying to go into a new place and being like, hey, we're going to run this, and everybody's there going like, dude, you do realize, you know, we've all moved past this, right? Like, it's especially with I guess I would say the creator space, because those guys do wield a lot of power. And I think overall, from what I've seen, he does good investigative work. So you don't have to worry about, like, let's say that data being, you know, completely damning and incorrect. It's basically the physical representation of the card. They show it. This is how it performs, blah, blah, blah. And if there are mistakes, which there have occasionally been mistakes by different websites, I feel like they usually get fixed pretty quickly. Or they're not about everything about the card. They're about one thing, which I think is a big deal. If you're trying to show what a card delivers and you're like, hey, maybe they mess up on a benchmark, that's one thing. But this is NVIDIA just trying to control the entire way in which somebody talks about something. Yeah. I haven't been happy with their drivers at all. I think NVIDIA's drivers are fucking revolting.
I mean, lately, and they used to be really solid. I mean, you know, it used to be that the whole reason you buy NVIDIA is because you know it's going to work, right?
You know it's going to work, and versus AMD's, which at the time at least was the opposite of that.
Was a coin flip.
Flip. Yeah, so now we're dealing with that, which is pretty rough. I would say when it comes to the coverage and stuff like that, most likely this will all get somewhat, I would assume, somewhat fixed, because not every card is this kind of weird performance too. So it's one card in their list and it shows bad stuff can happen, but there's also many cards that they deal with that are fine. So it's my hope is that it all gets sort of hashed out, and he's pretty belligerent about it. So I mean,
dude, I mean,
even some
I would be so scared.
Have called him on being too belligerent because he'll mention that in a video. But
because it feels like he's coming for every company out there. You know, there's always like a hit piece.
I mean, dude, I feel like a lot of those companies got away with it. I mean, currently, let me give you an example. Currently, I would say when you look at NVIDIA and you look at a driver, or you look at the fact of how terrible their customer support is when you have a problem, you go to their forums and it's just these guys trying to help you. It's not, you know, half the time it's not even like a company rep or somebody with extra data. It's like when you deal with Google sometimes and you're like, dude, who are you? Like, can you even help me? Or are you there to really regurgitate the 55 FAQs I can already see? You know, which is how that happens a lot of times. Hopefully some of this stuff gets fixed. I would just say don't get that fucking card though. At all. That card is terrible.
Which one?
The one that they were having the issue with, the 50,
60 or 70.
The one with the, I think it's the 8 gig VRAM.
Oh, yeah. But, you know, it's not just NVIDIA. I think, like you're saying, the industry was used to getting away with a lot of this stuff.
Absolutely true.
We saw it with, you know, motherboards, ASUS, like a bunch of stuff with problems with support.
I love
being completely full of
ASUS.
shit.
ASUS. I always pronounce it Asus. I don't know which one's right. Colin says Space Marine Remasters coming to PC and Xbox. Strangely, no PS5. Oh, that brings me to another point. Thank you very much. Colin stated that. The other point was in the last couple days. Do you need to go outside? In the last couple days, we've seen a couple different companies, including the Rebellion CEO, the guys who did Atomfall, talking about how well Game Pass has done for them. And that was interesting because they were profitable day one, and they were talking about how in today's current market, Game Pass offers a bit of security because they're on different, depending on how you sign with them and the deals you do, they offer a certain amount of money that will occur no matter what, so you can offset some of the prices. Right. But they were profitable day one, and then the question came up. Okay, so you're profitable day one, but would you be more profitable? And it was funny. He explained it. I thought he explained it pretty well, but his description of how purchasing works is something we've seen even in our Discord, which is that a person who gets it on Game Pass who likes it will tell their friend who maybe doesn't have Game Pass. So they either get Game Pass or they choose, I don't want to get Game Pass, but I still want the game, so I'm going to go buy it. And the knock-on effect of sales, and you could say FOMO, but that's negative connotation. I don't think this has anything to do with FOMO. I think it really does have to do with this is the way we've delivered it. You can still get the game any way you want, but it gets it into more people's hands so that they can say, good or not. And you hear multiple people talking about a game like this. And in all honesty, I've seen it even in reviews where people are like, oh, this appears to be a Game Pass game. Because sometimes Game Pass games have that middling review score, right? They're like, let's say 78 to 85, which to me is still a good game. That's sort of ridiculous to be like 85 means it's terrible. But when you look at that middle line, I've definitely seen some games, Avowed, Expedition, that are hitting Game Pass scoring really well, and I can see why somebody like Rebellion is like, you know what, this lets us make the game. We're going to see more of this, not less, especially as the industry sort of continues to have financial stuff.
Expedition was a huge one.
It's huge, and they just announced Metaphor is coming on it.
Yeah, Metaphor. I mean, whether you like it or not, it's one of the biggest games of last year, right?
Yeah. Was that last year? Was Metaphor last year? Wow.
Now you have me doubting.
Dude, sorry. It wasn't meant to make you doubt it. It's just like, that's how fast time flies. I think you're right, dude. I think Metaphor...
October 2024, I'm seeing here.
Is that insane? That's so crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is actually.
That's nuts. I buy good games on Game Pass and you get a discount. Yes. Yeah, you do get a discount there, which is pretty nice. It's always nice to get a little bit of a discount. But yeah, so they've got a bunch of games coming. It was nice to hear Rebellion sort of be open about it. There was some stuff he even said I can't talk about, because it's deals and stuff. But yeah,
I think we haven't heard people. We haven't heard people bitch about like regretting doing Game Pass. Right? Like devs in general have spoken really positively about.
We have heard somebody, not Yakuza. There was a dev who stated something along the lines of why their sequel wasn't on Game Pass.
Okay.
And I think it came down to because now we have a known name in the original game being on Game Pass, and now we want to try to get every cent, which they absolutely should. So they didn't do Game Pass the next one.
I see.
But you know what, though? There's been so many games, it's hard to remember. I do know that we talked about it on a podcast in here, for sure, that's popped up. But it's pretty rare, yeah. I mean, you're signing your own deal, right? They should be able to supply you with numbers. You've done it. You go in, a new vendor comes in, and you're like, I need you to supply me with all your numbers. I'm going to supply you with mine, and usually go into the deal with an understanding of the lowest, the middle, and the high. And I think that they stated, I know he stated that during discussion, within 1 or 2 days, somebody came in and said, we have actually blown through our high-level expectations for Atomfall, which is awesome because I like Atomfall, but it is a bit rough. And the idea of Atomfall getting a sequel or DLC, more patches, a sequel being my highest hope, is awesome to me. Like that, to me, that's great because I think Atomfall does something pretty weird. Atomfall's a little bit of an odd game, man. Like, the way it does quests and the way it plays, it feels almost like a Dying Light 1 mixed with Fallout. It's got some oddities in the way it controls and what it does and how little data it may give you. And remember, they're the guys who are like, hey, listen, some of our storylines don't end. That's the way we're not going to tell you every single thing. This isn't the ending episode of Lost where you're going to be able to track which ones we've forgotten. We're just telling you up front that some of this stuff is mystery. You'll never get an answer for it. And pretty ballsy when you think about it. We live in a time when people want things wrapped up. I think. I think that's fair to say. But did you do Atomfall?
No, I haven't.
Why do you hate that developer?
Specifically, I just didn't like the gameplay that much.
That you saw, you mean?
Yeah. So like the gunplay and stuff didn't feel that smooth. And it wasn't something I was too interested in from the standpoint of the, working the cases or the clues as well.
Yep.
So with those two things, but I like the visual presentation quite a bit. Like the menus were appealing to me, and like overall the aesthetics and the British voicings.
Mike,
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
Steven says, why do you think Doom isn't selling so well? Dude, and Solar brought up a game. Thank you, Jesus. I'm glad Solar showed up. He just brought up another game that I don't think enough people know about, and I had tech issues with this fucking game, so I could not review it. It was Eternal Strands. That was on Game Pass. And he played that and thought that was a solid game too. Solid.
Oh, yeah.
It may not be a AAA, but it's one of those ones that is like offers value to the service over time. Just like a PlayStation, when they add a classic, it adds value, to that service over time. Colin Bright, $5 BitCash to keep the lights on and for saving me money. Appreciate it. I hope I do save you money occasionally, because I get a lot of people bitching that when I like too many games in a row, they're like, you caused me to spend money. And I'm like, okay, listen, I don't know. I'm not going to accept that. I'll take that I save you money, but at some point you're pulling that wallet out. It's much easier to not pull your wallet out at all than it is to like take it out and make that purchase decision. So hopefully I did save you some cash. You were right about something. You said the menus and the HUD that you seem to like in Adamfall. You can't say Persona. You can't. But what's a game that you love the HUD/menu system in it? You can't say Persona. Because I think we all agree, even if you don't like Persona, that works. So without cheating and saying Persona, what is a game that maybe it's a sounds, maybe it's a slickness of the HUDs?
I'm trying to remember. There was a West game, but now I struggle to remember.
Dead West.
I think it was Evil West. Let me check.
Evil West was the XCOM one, I believe, or it was like pseudo.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just pulling it up on Steam to make sure it's the one I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
We've had so many West games, Okay, not Evil West. That one was good, but not for that reason.
Evil West, Dead West, West. I don't know. There's like 4 that have the West in their title.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that. I'll see if I can remember that one.
Okay, but you liked its HUD?
I like the HUD and the sound. The transitions were great. Let's see if I can think of
Kel
a different
brought up
one.
A good one, Mass Effect, a game known for its beautiful HUD and efficient inventory. I think he's teasing on the inventory because I believe that game is always missed on its inventory, but I will agree that Mass Effect, I liked its HUDs. I didn't like the inventory that much, at least in 1, but they did fix it, and by 2 and 3, I think it was pretty good, right? I think overall it's pretty good.
Yeah, what's a great.
Let's talk about a HUD that like you get into and you're all, this doesn't feel like it's slowing you down at all. See, that's the problem, right? Because a lot of these games,
as much as I loved Expedition, I did not like the menus.
Dude.
In that.
You mean the menus made by 77 people who apparently never talked?
Press R3 or like L3 to go into Luminous? What?
Ooh, SBZ brought up a good one. Dead Space.
Is it Weird West? Someone said Weird West. It was Weird West. Do you remember that one?
I do. Yeah. I didn't remember it at all for its HUD though.
Kind of like isometric ish.
That's the one I think I meant when I said XCOM like, but isometrics definitely the way.
Yeah, and the menu is great in that game. It has some great sounds. The transitions are slick and fast. They look great artistically too. It really stuck with me, that one.
Why do I feel like I'm going to argue with that on that? I'm going to have to look because I feel like I had an issue in particular with moving side to side, that there was something about, well, there's a lot of West games. I'll have to go look. There's a lot of West games, man.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah. I gotta see. But there was one in particular that had West in its name. It might have been Dead West, which was the action one. But there was one in particular that I had a lot of issues with the way it was moving between. It just.
I like the fast ones.
Yeah,
we always talk about the slow ass transitions and stuff.
Oh, it's so nice.
I also
so
don't
nice
like
when you
having
have
to
the fast one.
drag a cursor, you know,
You mean
whatever,
a
crosshairs, a
fake
cursor.
mouse like
Fake mouse.
Destiny? Fuck
Yeah.
that, man.
No,
Dude, I
man,
hate it.
I don't want that.
And it feels so slow. And at some point you get into that, and then Destiny loves the soft button press. I would rather have press A and then press B to go back than hold A and watch this fucking quick time circle go around. Division does it where you hold an A. And you're just like, no. If I make a mistake, that's on me. I don't want to have to hold the button. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like such a first world problem. But when you're in the HUDs in these games that have you comparing 50 weapons.
Is there a like devil's advocate why holding buttons is needed nowadays? Why is that a big thing now? I think the main idea is like they want to give two actions to the same button. So maybe like open a chest or jump. So like you hold to open the chest, but you press quickly to jump, something like that.
But when we're in the HUD, if you,
I
don't know.
No.
I've never.
Yeah, that's on you. If you pick the wrong skill in the HUD, you know,
that's on you. That's on you. Wicked Critter says, I hate Hogwarts HUD game. Was fun though. I actually didn't mind the HUD, but probably because of the music. I actually think Hogwarts is one of the few games where I would go into the HUD in Hogwarts just to hear the track that played.
Well, the music was great.
Music in that, yeah. So
navigating the menus wasn't that great because you had the fake mouse, and then you also like for the map,
right?
It was pretty confusing. I never clicked with that map.
I'm gonna have to go back and see, dude, because it's been a while since I've sort of gone into Hogwarts. I did a little bit of the
I mean, it was polished for sure.
Yeah,
but
and that music though, oh, it's so good.
Yeah,
Good
music
HUD
was
music.
great.
If you're gonna be in there performing hell and comparing a fucking M16 to an M16 with
True.
a single extra bullet in it, at least if the music's good, you're like, hey, I can deal. Stefan says, surely the best HUD is one you don't need to pay too much attention to. I would agree if it's not based in the fiction. If it's based in the fiction, I'm okay with it. I just don't want soft stuff. But I sort of do like games where the HUD is a part of the fiction, where it looks like papyrus or something that you're writing on, as long, again, as it's quick and not, For example, I'll tell you the worst HUD moment in a game for me. So it's a best. That is Skyrim looking up to the stars to pick your skills. It's so, I love it. And then I hate it because you look up and you're like looking at the skills by hitting up, and then you have to go through the skills super slow and go like and move from star to star. But the fiction of like everything in the world being based around that, I just loved that, looking up to the stars to see like my future, and then being like, God damn, it takes almost a light year to travel between these two skills because they're different stars. So it's good.
Yeah.
And then it goes to shit, and then it's good when you leave it. I like that fiction. I love the fiction stuff if somebody does a good job and figures it out. Flexa says, not intuitive. Getting in out of a car in Cyberpunk 27 was like hold B to exit was press Y. Oh, yeah. Have you ever jumped into that game when everything is normally B? I'm not talking about Nintendo games that like to just fuck with you, but I'm talking about like a game where one of their major buttons is just different for no reason. So you spend the first 2 hours of the game.
We talked about like the parry, where you have two parry buttons in Expedition.
And
so like the gradient parries, you have the trigger, and then the normal you had the bumper.
Yeah.
It's kind of pointless.
That was not great. Amputecture 299 says holding buttons only works if you're doing an elongated action, pulling a rope. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth had a lot of egregious hold button to pull lever, which makes no sense mechanically. That's okay.
Yeah,
that's fair.
See that.
Yeah, I see that. Now I see what he's saying. Wizard of Smoke says throwback, but Mirror's Edge HUD was great. That is a throwback, man.
I don't remember it.
One of these days when I do by the way, if you're a patron and you didn't get this week's mini podcast, I don't know what I call them. It's because I was doing the game Games of June video, which popped while you guys were in here for this. So go check that out. I'll probably try to do a mini podcast this weekend. Yeah, I'll probably do one for you guys this weekend. Maybe we'll talk about HUDs in that one. One of these days, I'll get other people to come in too. I'm just doing those on the side when I have a chance. What were we gonna say?
Actually, reducing the HUD is one of the best things that I've been trying lately. So the more you get used to the game and the systems, you become comfortable.
Oh, it's so nice.
You no longer need, all these indicators of things. And for example, like Assassin's Creed works great without a HUD.
Doom, you can turn a bunch of... Yes, yeah. We talked some people into the chat to turning off or minimizing or shrinking the font so that you have a nicer, cleaner picture. But if you still need the data, it's there, or you can turn it off. I think Doom worked quite well without a HUD. But I could be. I don't know. I liked it without a HUD. I've been playing Mass Effect Andromeda and have to hold triangle for about 30 seconds to open some doors. Why? This is Vapor. I don't know. I don't remember. Dude, if there's a game... Okay, here we go. What's a game? Do you remember, you always get that question, what's a game that you wish if you could forget and replay? What's a game you wish you could forget? That's it. You fucking wish. Period. You're like...
Not to play again.
No, not to play again. You're just like, I feel like all those brain cells, even if they were just devoted to different pizza ingredients, would be better than remembering that game. What's a game?
Hey, don't belittle pizza ingredients. There's some... well,
that's true.
There's some importance there.
There is. Yeah. If it's not pepperoni, it's less so. But what is a game that you just wish you just really felt like even if you liked it for a bit, whatever, but you just, you wish you could forget?
Yeah. Oof,
that's pretty hard because you're not that kind of person.
I usually know what I'm getting into with games. So it's rare that I jump into a full stinker of a game. Pretty rare.
I get that.
I'll see if I can think of any. Do you have any that were just like complete waste of time?
Yeah.
Like Gollum?
No, because I can... playing a bad game is super valuable as somebody who covers games. Because you'll hear people say this is the worst game I've ever played. Yeah, this is the worst game I've ever played. And you're like, seriously? Like Gotham Knights is the worst game you've ever played? Then you've never played... like a billionth as many games as you should. But I will tell you, there is a game that taught me nothing at all other than frustration, and I bought it, and it's called Drake of the 99 Dragons. And it is horrible in every way possible, and we didn't have anything else to play. So I think we spent the entire weekend playing it. And Cadiz and I will continually tease one another and say, if you keep fucking with me, I'm going to like send that to your house and make you play it. Or I'm going to challenge you to play Drake and the 99 Dragons. The game is fucking horrendous. It is. Wow. It is not fun. It is not good. It doesn't control well. It doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good. It it is and it's in my brain. And because it's so not good, it doesn't go away like an average game like Evil 55 names with evil in it or West in it. It doesn't do that. It sticks in there like a son of a bitch. I mean, I swear to God, I'd wake up in cold sweats going, oh, fuck, I don't have to play that game.
I have one.
Okay,
Callisto Protocol.
Damn. Really? It's fair. It's fair. So,
okay. I absolutely quit that game because of how infuriating. Like, I love it. Do you remember how the dodging worked, by the way? Like, it was horrendous.
I get that it's been patched, but we're talking about, like, pretty within, let's say, a month of the game coming out. Yeah. It was, and do you think, Johnny, a little bit of the reason why it bothered you is because if you look at the game generally, you think you could have liked it if it had been good? Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost good. But the gameplay was so horrendous,
dude,
that I couldn't play that. It was just tremendous how bad it was.
Oh, Southwick just brought up a title that I agree with, and I don't want to even say it out loud. True Crime. These are the Sleeping Dog prequels. So there's True Crime and True Crime 2. And as much as I can say it, I really wish I had never played it so I could just have a memory of Sleeping Dogs, even though I don't think that's the greatest game like a lot of people do. I still think it's such a much better game. And I beat True Crime 1 once and 2 twice. They control poorly. They play poorly. And I think that is a absolutely fair I think that is a fair answer. Good for you. I wish you hadn't said it. Jose says Forza Horizon 4 lobbies back in Horizon 3 were 12 players, non-ghosted. Horizon 4 released confirmed to 72, which was outstanding news. Unfortunately, it's 72 ghosted. I'm assuming you mean ghosted by you can.
Oh, the avatars?
I'm assuming he means drive through them. Like, I guess.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that's a performance thing, right? To spare performance, you make them ghosted. Makes sense, but I could see why that. Echo the Dolphin? Dude, come on. Get the fuck out of here. Wicked just said Echo the Dolphin. Come on. There's a new one coming out. A new Echo coming out. Come on.
Really?
Yeah, Echo the Dolphin was pretty rough, though. It was a Sega classic, and it was loved by a lot of people because you were a dolphin. You had dolphin powers. Well, what's a dolphin power? You had, like, sonar blast. You could break shit like ice when you went to the Arctic and stuff. But, yeah, it was pretty rough. I mean, I feel like that's pretty harsh to say that, but I'll get with you. Amperature, I'm still pronouncing that wrong, says, honestly, I think Callisto would have been pretty good without the combat system.
Yeah, I think that's why it pissed me off so much, is that it had potential to be a great game. Right. It looked visually incredible, but then the gameplay was so infuriating. Like, I really don't get angry at stuff often outside of League of Legends. But
outside of the game that, by the way, he still plays. Continue, by all means.
But like on occasions. But yeah, it was just so infuriating the way it worked, where you would face one enemy and you have the ability to dodge one enemy at a time, because that's how the mechanic worked.
Right.
So the moment you had more than one enemy, which was super often, you're completely screwed. Yeah. Because you simply can't dodge the other enemies, actually.
DC says something. I'm gonna. Hey, I've been reading everybody's answer. I sort of get where he's coming from. Two Worlds. I don't know if you ever. There was Two Worlds 1 and 2, and I sort of have a soft spot for them as like.
Okay. Yeah.
Side titles to Bethesda titles. They were rough as hell, but they did a couple things right. But I don't think he's alone in that one. I think those. Were
those are old, right? Those are like
that's 360,
2010 or something.
Number 2. And number 1 might even been like, I think it was 360 as well. I don't think that was on Xbox original, but I sort of dug them, but I get why people, Colin says, I agree, Johnny. Looked amazing, but combat was
there you go.
Horrendous.
Cheers, Colin.
Jose says, Two Worlds was great, but that might be nostalgia. I think it's nostalgia for me. It also did do a couple things. It reversed the idea that Bethesda has the same 11 rednecks fucking in a city, and Two Worlds had a ton of people in the cities. They didn't do a bunch, but they were there, so it felt a little better. It felt like a little bit more realistic than going in and questioning if you're entering a cult in Skyrim because there's only 9 people in a giant city, and you're like, dude, 9 is obviously hyperbole, but you get my drift. It was Gothic. Okay, Gothic. I mean, yeah, Gothic tried to do the Dark Souls before Dark Souls did Dark Souls kind of thing. They were pretty goddamn tough games. What's the toughest game you've ever played?
Cool.
Toughest game, but you still wanted to play it. So not tough because it was bad, but tough. You were like, damn, this is difficult, but I still want to play
it. When you look at it from the perspective of at the time.
Yeah, at the time.
It was probably Sekiro. Because at the time, that I was just not ready for something like that. The whole idea of like parry focus is not what I had learned by like playing Dark Souls. The style was much more so around committing to big hits and just spacing and stuff like that, and dodging much more than the parrying. So it was kind of a change in paradigm to have to fully focus on almost the rhythm game aspect of it. And then once I got with that, I enjoyed my second playthrough a lot more. But I would say like the first playthrough I tackled, because I was also streaming, so it was like extra hard pressure-wise to like not suck completely, right? That was probably the hardest when you look at the time. If I was to play it now, probably it's not that bad. But
yeah, I bet you just because, if that's your first one, I think those are always difficult of the Dark Souls style.
yeah,
Bullet hells can be quite difficult. For
Yeah.
example, no one had really done a 3D bullet hell, and then Returnal came around, and you saw all these people just moaning, just aching online. Just, I beat Dark Souls with one controller, fucking button working, and in reverse. I can't believe. And I do understand the frustration of being like, I'm pretty good at this, and you go into Returnal, and you're like, what the? This thing's scooting me consistently because it was It was a hard game.
It was unforgiving.
Yeah. And it was a game that you could game to be less hard, but you had to learn that, and it took community learning. I think it took some community learning.
I think another aspect of that game was that you couldn't repeat things consistently because the runs are different every time. So you might struggle with one enemy, but now to practice that enemy, you have to run into it again.
Yeah.
And you might not do so in a while. That's actually why I think League of Legends is the hardest game that I've ever played, because in that sense you can't like practice scenarios in the way that you would in a fighter game as a comparison.
Yep.
Because you can really specifically drill certain combos and certain things. League of Legends, everything that comes up is so dynamic, so different that you have to face like 1,000 scenarios and then learn like little bits.
Are you
and
fucking
just kind of
League of Legends
layer over layer? Dude,
I think League of Legends
I don't know how to
basically
describe
hit A to
this.
win.
Okay, so I recently reached gold rank, which is not even that good.
Should
This
I
is
be
kind of
impressed? Is gold rank? Okay, so gold rank is
gold
super
rank
high,
is
but
kind
it's
of
high.
like the middle of the Gauss curve, where like most of the population is either silver or gold. I think. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm not even like higher than average or anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it took me an absolutely colossal amount of effort to get there. So I think I've been playing for like 2 years and something. And I've put a lot of fucking effort into it, man. Like I've, spent a lot of time researching, practicing, yada, yada, to get to here. There are so many levels of mastery above where I'm at that is complete. It's just daunting when you look at it. It's when you see someone play the piano and you say, oh, there's levels to this shit. I thought I could play piano, but actually, what I do is like literally babies play.
Is it so two people can play like Chopin or something, but one person who's a master puts their own flourish on it, blah, blah, blah. Are you saying that even if you put is this a situation where you're talking about their reaction time is just a millisecond better, and that millisecond over time ultimately equals a whole other rank? Or are you like, what exactly would you say the difference is between whatever you are and the next up? And it can't be grind, because that's not what we're talking about, I don't think.
Right. Well, yeah, no, correct. So it's a combination, and I think this is why it's so hard, is there's so much knowledge that you accumulate over time, and that, let's say, a much better player will have compared to maybe me, who have been playing for less time. They know, so there are maybe, 200 different champions, or maybe 150 or whatever.
Right.
Each with its kit, and now you have to know every kit for every champion. You have to know what the interactions are. So like, if they cast this ability first, what's the interaction with this other all these different things you have to learn. So there's the element of knowledge. So a better player will have much better knowledge, and they will know if I'm playing against them, they will know, I've used my most useful ability. Now is the time to go in and maybe take a trade, as an example. So there's an element of knowledge. There's an element of just sheer execution. And this is not related to reflexes. It's a combination of anticipation plus drills, just repetitions. So because they have the muscle memory, the mechanics in place, plus they know exactly what's gonna happen next, right? Because they know what the abilities are, yada yada, how the person's gonna play it likely. So it's I would say more so that anticipation rather than reaction. So maybe similar to fighting games, you play quite a bit of fighting games, right? How much of it is it anticipation because you know someone that plays that character, you know that they're likely going to kind of lean on certain combos, and so you're naturally going to, react in certain ways.
I think the difference is that obviously with so many heroes, it doesn't translate as well to fighting because fighting's usually anywhere from 8 to 24
fewer
characters. Yeah. With a ton more movements and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But
combos and
yeah,
whatever.
they're not. Yeah, I don't even think even what you're saying translates as much to a fighting game as it probably does to another game like League of Legends. Fighting games are weird because fighting games, a lot of it is reflexes, and then it's we used to joke. I don't know what the term is because there's guys who you watch on YouTube who will break down a Street Fighter thing or whatever, and you're like, oh, but we use just literally anti combos where you knew what they were going to do. They knew what you were going to do. So you didn't do what you were going to do because you knew that they were not going to do what you were expecting them to do. And so pretty soon,
that's mind games now.
And by the way, that's why a new person could come into Virtual Fighter, by the way, and you would see them chew somebody up for like one round because they had no control over what they were doing. They were hitting buttons that made no sense whatsoever. And so you do have some reaction, but you also have some surprise that plays into it. But yours is definitely, I think, it's a different style of skill. It's obviously it's there, but I will tell you that when I watch you play, I don't see it. I can't see it. And so what I see is the same exact game 100,000 fucking times, where obviously in no way, shape, or form is that what it is. It's just what I see. And that's why I was asking you about the Chopin thing, because if you get two people, somebody who can play a piano arrangement, technically, it usually is an exact representation of what's written. And then you hear somebody who knows how to play, and it's their version of what's written. It's or it's every single thing is dialed in perfectly depending on the type of player and what they're known for. But yeah, no, it's interesting stuff. I just it's the same thing with Rocket League. You'll watch Rocket League and go, people are hitting a ball into.
And I think that's a good comparison too, because when I watch Rocket League, like I think Omar plays a few times, like I've seen a few people in the Discord. Yeah. So I look at them and I don't know enough about the game to tell what is a good play. Like what is a high level. I mean, sure, scoring is good, right? Objectively, but like I can't tell the skill level by looking at it. I think it's the same thing with League. Like when you look at it from the outside, you're not perceiving all of these things that are happening.
Yeah.
You're just seeing the sheer execution of like the clicks, right? And like what's physically going on screen.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I'll probably never get, but I continue to watch because it's interesting to see.
Someday, Carrick.
Yeah. I mean, someday will be another day, but it won't be another day I'll be playing League. That's for sure. I don't think I have, I mean, I'm sure I would over time have the whatever, but I don't have whatever it is that it speaks to you, where you may not have whatever it speaks to me for Virtual Fighter. Where, and I don't even know if I have that. We'll have to see when the new Virtual Fighter comes out. It's like,
because I was always naturally drawn to these like MOBA style games. I do think it's something like that either speaks to you or not.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Slack32 says, I figured that instead of posting on Twitter, I'd ask you here. Odd topic, but I know Carrick's talked about these things. Big props to you, Johnny Silver, Absy, Reg, all of you. Well, go Burns in there. So I have a friend who's just a user in life. I've tried to help him. But by the end of whatever next disaster he has in life, he's reverted all the way back to the same thing. How do you deal with that? Thanks. Sorry if I'm a downer. We'll get this one out of the way really quick. Dude, I don't know. Like, my opinion on this has changed or adjusted depending on who I meet and what they are. But I would say you always have to protect yourself. I also think that if you're a friend with somebody, it's hard to like walk away from somebody who's a friend. But I can tell you that things have changed even with my job where I've tried to help somebody and I've got what I would consider to be a pretty bad result. And I that's online versus real, which can be a huge difference, a dramatic difference. But I even just a year or so ago, I got burned by something that I was like, this is odd. I was trying to help somebody out and I was like, man, I don't quite understand the result that occurred. But I don't have time to think about it. But at the time, I was like, well, that's puzzling. I would say if there's somebody that's in your life all the time, you do need to talk to them. However, there are people that aren't going to learn, dude. And I mean, it sucks to say walk away from a friend, but it also depends on how much energy you're putting out. You tweeted or DM'd me, so I don't know how much energy you put out. But I would say it used to be a joke in D&D called a psychic vampire, which is a person who sucks your energy. And
Absolutely.
I don't know what they call it now. I don't know what the zeitgeist.
And I know I told you I had one of those types of friends that I had to move away from.
Yeah. And I would say I probably disconnect way too quick because of my history, and maybe Johnny doesn't. Well,
now I do. It's a lesson I learned. Let's put it that way.
You learned, but I don't know if you're gonna do it on the net. You know, you don't want to be a dick for, you don't want to just not help anybody because of one situation.
Yeah.
So, but what I was just gonna say is you do have to take stock. If you find yourself tired more than not tired when you're around that person, you need to think about it. You need to think of the good times and the bad times. And some friends, I mean, everybody lives through their own shit. You don't know what they're, even if they're a friend, you don't know what they're doing when they're not around you. So, but I would say ultimately you have to take care of yourself. And if you find yourself, mentally exhausted, dealing with somebody constantly and sort of fixing their shit, a lot of times you just have to be like, well, okay, I'm done. And go out, find some other people.
I don't know if you're familiar. Sorry, continue.
Go for it.
That was it. Are you familiar with the metaphor of like filling your cup?
Yes.
So it's the idea that like you will have a friend that maybe fills your cup in the sense that you feel, more relaxed, more fulfilled after a good conversation with them.
Yeah.
And then you have the opposite, where it's someone who drains your cup constantly, where you find yourself having to expend a lot of extra energy to just keep things in the status quo, to keep them from imploding. And that was sort of the situation I had with that other person. And I really like that idea of kind of prioritizing yourself, making sure your cup's getting filled, because then you can help other people too, right? Naturally.
Yeah. Jay Reaper, $10 super chat. Hope everybody's having a good day. Hope you are too. Hope you're enjoying work if you're at work. And if
Cheers,
not,
Jay.
hope you're getting some gaming in.
But also, I just wanted to ask you.
I just want to say, definitely appreciate the super chat, Jay. I know you've been busy. And congrats on the cool stuff that's been going on. What were you going to say?
Well, I wanted to ask you this, because what I struggle with sometimes is that when someone shares a problem, they say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I'm immediately going into like problem solving mode. I'm going, okay, I almost like take it as a project of mine. And I say, okay, this is our project. Okay, what are our options? What are we looking at? We got these. What are the best ideas we have? Let's try this. Let's try that. And for some people, this is a bit too much. It's a bit overwhelming. It's like, I guess to some extent, they don't want me to look for solutions. They more so just want to be heard, right? Or maybe they just want sympathy. They just want to share. And I'm already going into like proactive mode, like, hey, this is a new project type thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it takes all kinds, because you'll have somebody who also, for certain parts of your life, fills. I don't like that metaphor, because I think people fill it. It's like any one-liner I ever hear. I fucking hate one-liners, because they're so belligerently stupid.
It's simplistic, right?
It's beyond simplistic, and it can be fucking ruinous if it works for you for a little bit, and you're like, that's going to work for me. Where that's not how life works. But ultimately, I would just say the same. Overall, you have to just see, how much energy you have talking to the person. I mean, I'm more belligerent in real life, where I will ask somebody pretty much up front, are you telling me because you want help? Because I've definitely wasted time trying to help, and then be like, oh, yeah, they just wanted somebody to talk to. The problem is that's clinical, and some people get very angry by that. They'll be like, but I want to talk to you. And I'll be like, well, let's cut to the chase, which is really a bad idea. But I have said that on accident, and be like,
because I almost want to ask, like, what do you want from me right now? Do you just want a friendly year? Because I'm good with that too. But my natural thing is going to be to look for a solution, try to work with you, like, okay, let's try this, let's try that.
Yeah. But damn it, I can't remember what I was going to say. Ultimately, damn it, I was going somewhere with that. I was going to say online friends versus real life friends. The one thing you also, that everything changes between the two, and that they are not directly compatible skills. And so if you treat somebody a certain way online versus offline or vice versa, that will almost assuredly cause a problem. You definitely have to treat online friends a slightly different way than you treat a person who is near you, because you may see them, they may be involved in their job, where I think that's where I got burned, is because I jumped in. I was like, I'm just going to do what I do normally. And I'm pretty careful with stuff, but there were a couple times where I wasn't. And I think I've got burned every single time, where I'm like, oh, damn,
Yeah.
And again, clear communication is probably the most important. Like, if there's expectations, you got to know them, and you also have to put them so that a person knows. Like, if you say, hey, I need to talk to you on a Sunday, and it's an online friend, you need to verify they will actually need to talk to you on a Sunday. Because I've also got burned there where somebody says, I need help right away. And I'll be like, okay, I'm busy. I'm in a podcast, but I can talk to you at 4. And then you reach out and say, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, I don't know. It's not a big deal. And you're like, damn, I sort of set stuff aside. So it's all pattern making. It takes a while. It's a good question, though. And there's a lot of different answers. But again, take care of you. Yeah. That's the most important. Another question. SpaceX says Starship would cut the trip to Mars down to 90 days. That's great, but it shows how damned far away things are. Do you think we should look at the moon first? ACG podcast from the moon, baby. Also, great Roadcraft review, Carrick. Dude, I do. I honestly think the moon should be where we first go. You'll hear somebody like Neil deGrasse, I think, who says, why go back to the moon? We can go to Mars, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's closer for rescue. It's closer for resources. It's closer for communications faster. Yes. I think that one's easy. I think you should.
Well, not only that,
the moon is a smart place to go at first. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Not only that, but having a strong base on the moon is an amazing launching pad to anything else we want to do.
Yeah.
Because you no longer have to exit the gravitational pull of the Earth. So anything you want to launch from the moon is going to be so easy, right? Because it takes no energy to get off the moon itself. So if you want to launch stuff from the moon to, say, Mars, that's going to be a much more sustainable project than just launching a bunch of stuff from Earth.
I should point out that once you get the shit to the moon in the first place.
I was gonna say,
I knew exactly where you're going, but I wanted to point that out because the energy can't be. You need the same energy no matter what, but one's over a long.
We're assuming we can set up an amazing base on the moon. That's.
Dude, if you went to the moon and set up a base, what would be to me, the moon would also be awesome because of we sort of know what it is. We know what's sort of set up. If I went to the moon, I was trying to think what I would want or what I would take with me. Like, what's one thing that I would take with me? So you're stuck on the moon, right? So I can't remember how long it is now, but a couple days to get between the two. I can't remember, especially now with faster rockets. But if you were on the moon, what would be the one device or one thing? I'm assuming for you it'd be a guitar, right? That only
guitar,
makes sense.
for sure.
A guitar,
yeah.
Dude, I don't have an answer.
Well, yeah. You wouldn't be able to play the guitar.
No.
Unless you're in the station.
Inside, yeah. So it works for you. I'm just saying I don't know what I would bring. I've thought about this for a while. It's a cool thought experiment because it needs to be forever. Guitar is forever.
Yes.
You can get better. You can
maybe
learn.
A console or something where you can just
because come on,
play some games.
At some point, I don't boot up the console and it's here, let alone on the fucking moon, right? That's like saying bring your VR, and I'm like, dude, I've got a bunch of VR and I still don't turn it on. I don't think I turn it on the moon any more than I do here after the idea of going on the moon.
Maybe a really good book. If you say, listen, I'm gonna bring no,
because I'd read it and then at some point you're bored with that. I think guitar is perfect because it's
but can't we back out of this project some days into it?
Well,
are we committed to?
Let's say you're committed or you don't know the return time. That's why I think a guitar or an instrument's probably your best bet.
Yes. Yeah. True.
And then after that, it becomes quite difficult as an answer because at some point you're repeating the same shit. You're just like, this is the same book. Same. Yeah. Dude, have you ever thought about this? Almost everything in the world that we do entertainment-wise has that middle area that's quiet, like a movie before the middle part and the climax will get quiet, and your music will sometimes have those interludes, even in a hard rock song where sometimes it gets quiet, little melodic guitar. Imagine if your book tried to do that, just empty pages. You're like, you're at page 150, and it's like, we're going to go with the slow part. No,
nothing is
just
going
nothing.
on.
Or a word each page. I was thinking about that a couple of days ago, going like, it's weird that books, when you look at them, there is no downtime, even in the downtime. And I get that music doesn't have that, even though some songs do have silence for a bit, whether it be like, I've seen songs about protest where they'll have 17 seconds in the middle to, in some way for a protest for something that happened or whatever. But I was like, books, that would be really weird. Just trying to read a book and being like, no, nothing's going on.
Dude, I hadn't thought of that, because a lot of books, you don't have this plateau where things
even
are kind
the
of
quiet
chill,
times are investigative or whatever. There's not really the time where there's not much going on. But yeah, I don't know. Weird thoughts by me. Let's see. We got, what's this one? Oh my God. We got a great one, dude. This is awesome. You ever had a friend who wants to talk about something you have absolutely no interest in at all? I'm not going to say League, because people will be thinking I mean League.
History. I'm not the biggest history buff, and I've had some.
Do you have a friend, and it's their thing, you mean? Like it's their thing?
Yes.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
Dude, that's rough. That's rough.
Because I try, I will try to be interested and see, okay, so I gotcha.
Man, I'm pretty careful to make sure I'm not going to get bored. So the friends I have usually have one or two interests that we can rock back on.
Yeah.
But it is true, man. You get that one guy and they have a fire in them, and I love listening to it maybe the first time and then after that. And I'm sure people feel that way about me with video games, where I get with them and my parents are like, oh my God, he's going to talk about Sonic or something. Well, no, I would never do that to my parents, but you get my drift. Oh, do you know what it is, Johnny? I know you guys all care, and I do because you guys care, but food. If I have a friend who's talking about recipes and they're going to cook tonight and they're all excited.
You're more at the functional level. It works. It works. Feeds me.
Yeah. Like Andy, I want to have Andy back on because he's a cook. And so he has these stories about all this stuff. So that interests me. But when you get that person who comes over and they're like, I was testing this weekend, and the idea that somebody would
technique.
Yes. And the idea that somebody would spend time to let's say, figure out the best way to cook something, when I'm like, fire, meat, heat, done, eat. And they're all, no. What you do is you'll see a YouTube channel where the only way to cook this steak is to do this for 15 seconds, flip it over. And I'm like, dude, you already lost me. You lost me at the prep. It's just fucking cook a goddamn thing. Yeah. I do have a friend who loves cooking. And when they talk about it, I'm just because they don't have the experiences of somebody like Andy or Victor from Vermintide. When Victor Magnuson comes on and he talks about cooking, that's interesting because he cooks, but it's also a different culture. So it has to be mixed with something, I guess, is all I'm saying when somebody talks about. Let's see. What else do we got for news? What do you got on the Discord list for news?
So
you had 3 or 4, right?
Oh, did I? Yeah. So we talked about Roadcraft. Epic Store has 3 free games this month, and 2 of them are really interesting. We have Sifu and Deliver at All Costs.
That's crazy. That's so cool.
At no cost in this case.
Ooh, Johnny made a pun. Deliver at no cost.
I
like
it. That's about it. I saw that there was a rumored Steam integration in Microsoft environments like Xbox. So someone saw a Steam developer something popping up.
Yeah.
And that presumably is to be some integration to play Steam games. Do you think that's
I think it's
a
coming
strong
for sure.
Possibility?
For sure.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that's coming for sure. Yeah. And I think
do you think the opposite is possible? The Game Pass games, for example, played through Steam, say in the Steam Deck or things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think of all the companies who want to be everywhere, Microsoft's probably the only one that does and doesn't seem to be backing away from it, even if they're making money.
Yeah,
It seems
they
like
seem keen.
yeah,
They're
they've
like
seen a
just
future that's different, whether we agree with it or not. It's like because there's so
they're
many
almost like
facets.
saying yes to everybody at the prom. They're like, I'll go out with you, with you, with you.
I mean, dude, if you're looking to get laid, it's the best way to do it.
The best way to do it.
Depends on longevity, but.
And then I saw that Stellar Blade 2 was confirmed by Shift Up.
I know.
That's awesome.
It is, but did you expect a Stellar Blade 2?
Honestly, not really. No, I didn't think so. But without like talking about spoilers or anything, I could see them do something with the setting, even if maybe the characters are not necessarily involved. Yeah. So that's interesting too. And I think the game was really fun. So that as a foundation is also interesting.
Anything else?
So that's it from me. We have some questions from people. Should we speed run these?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Speku says, is this a good material for a movie? And he links to the Elden Ring, where they say Alex Garland is working with FromSoft to do a live action. Alex Garland was behind Ex Machina, which was one of my favorite movies. But he also did a couple that I didn't like that much, like I forget what the name was, Invasion or something. Doesn't matter. So it's been a bit hit or miss, but I think he's a great director. So I'm excited to see what they do.
I couldn't be less excited about an Elden Ring.
Because, dude, still to this day, the plot evades me completely.
I would love it if they played against type, and it's just a character standing there watching you do your quest, and he's just sipping. He's like, that guy's really working hard. And then the next day, it's like a journal where it's like, May 1st or whatever. And it just shows a guy get up, and he just watches the character run by. I'll watch it if it looks good. There's nothing about that world that appeals to me as a full movie. But again, that doesn't mean that they're not going to, investigate different times or different things going on. Yep. It's just hard to know.
It was so funny talking with Abzi because he understands the plot of Elden Ring, and I still completely don't after 2 full playthroughs. And he was telling me how the plot is about aliens and stuff. And I was like, dude, like, did we play the same game? I didn't get any of that. Like,
Abzi sounds like when Joe Rogan and a friend get together and talk about doing mushrooms.
Like the meme with the guy with the hair, like the aliens guy. Yeah. He's like, aliens, dude. Yeah. He asks, what's our favorite video game adaptation? That's a good one. We've had some.
Does he mean just movies and shows?
Yes.
Shows, Fallout, books, Halo.
Oh.
Those would be mine.
He says favorite, and which one did you dislike the most? Yeah.
Halo, the show.
Yeah.
Halo, the books are incredible because basically the first 3 are quite literally you playing video games, and they just recorded it, and it fucking works. I've read those books so many times, and it feels like I'm playing the game, or it's weird like that. I love them. I think they're quite well done, but the TV show is horrendous. And it beats out it beats out Mario, it beats out Double Dragon because they spent a ton of money, and the person who made it made a fucking clear choice to not care about something, which you can't say about Double Dragon or Mario, which are terrible. I would also say a lot of people are probably going to say something like Sonic, which has done quite well recently, and I still haven't seen, so I can't speak on Sonic.
Yeah, I mean, Fallout is an easy one. Yeah. I really like the adaptation.
It's done really well.
Yeah,
Fallout is done spectacularly well. Is there you probably, I mean, it's too old for you to have watched Mario was old for me. Like I think like
I did watch that actually. Funny enough, yeah, I did. That was awful.
Yeah, awful.
Yeah.
What else we got?
Master Paz says, is there a song or album you would like to be turned into a game? For example, there's an adventure game, Last Day of June, that is based on Steven Wilson's song Drive Home.
Oh, I didn't know
Okay,
that.
that's
I know the
really
answer,
interesting.
and any other answer is wrong. Operation Mindcrime from Queensryche, because it is a album that is quite literally a story. Every song is a story. It's all about one particular thing, and it's got a better story than Elden Ring could ever imagine. Sorry, I'm joking, but it is phenomenal. I would kill to see an Operation Mindcrime game if done well, like Detroit Become Human developers or something like that. Detroit, yeah,
that's
absolutely
cool.
Operation Mindcrime.
There's an album by Dream Theater. I'm not the biggest Dream Theater guy, but this one I really liked. It was called The Astonishing. And it was kind of like a rock opera where there was a plot that kind of evolved through the songs, and there were themes and stuff for each of the characters.
Okay.
That was really interesting, and that could be a cool plot, I think. So
I'll have to check that one out. What's it called again? Could you please tell me that one again?
Yeah, The Astonishing.
Okay, thanks. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
That is one album that I don't mind listening like from back to back. And again, not the biggest Dream Theater fan myself.
I'm not even the biggest Queensryche fan either, but when they're done well and it fits the show or then you're just like, that has to be, or feels like it has to be the answer.
Yeah. Well, The Wall from Pink Floyd is also good. I think that could be maybe turned into a game, although it's a bit
that's eclectic as shit. That's all over the place. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That would Kojima could make that, but
yeah, he can make that work.
Yeah.
This one from Something Valentine. After listening to last week's podcast discussing the deep ocean, I wonder what you guys think is the worst place environment to be stranded in. Would it be desert, mid of the ocean, Arctic tundra, etc.? For me, the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Yeah, I guess there's food and water, but the risk of being eaten by something or poison, etc. Plus, I have no idea what plant life is edible or not. Oh yeah, I would be immediately fucked in the Amazon. But
he's saying did he say the worst?
The worst environment to be stranded in.
It would be desert or Arctic for me, and I think because they're both extremes and there's stuff living in most deserts, there's life, but if you go to the poles, there are quite literally places where other than, bacteria, there just isn't animal life.
You just don't have any options.
Or you don't have
anything
options
to work with.
Yeah, I would toss that up to a 50-50 chance. They would both suck balls. And being in the and they would both, at least, here's the cool thing. Heat doesn't kill you as quick as frostbite not frostbite, but freezing to death. Freezing to death and you hear people who have frozen and then they come back or they've, come close to it and the pain goes away pretty quickly. I feel like in the desert, dying takes a while and it would suck balls to be slowly baked and run out of water and your body doesn't have water anymore.
Absolutely.
And you're like, this fucking sucks. So I would say the desert would be the worst after I walked myself through that. Desert. Yeah,
I would take the coin flip of the Amazon rainforest. I'll eat the beans, and if I die from it, so be it.
Yeah, I mean that one wouldn't be. Yeah, and there's food there.
Or eat some nuts. So there's some stuff.
I feel like other than being slowly eaten alive by parasites and bot flies and all these crazy ass horrible things that The Last of Us is basically.
I've watched quite a bit of Bear Grylls.
Yeah, me too.
So I feel like I can.
We're prepped. The worst, right? Worst. The worst wouldn't be the Amazon for you then, right? Because you'd be What would the worst be?
No, I think the tundra is just I mean middle. Let's be honest, like middle of the ocean.
Oh, middle of the ocean would definitely suck. But so here's the problem with the ocean, and correct me if I'm wrong. Most people can't kill themselves slowly like that, like to go underwater and breathe in water to kill themselves. So you'd be in the water for a while, uncomfortable, slowly dying, trying to keep alive because the human body has
just
pretty good safety
or whatever.
Yeah. Versus the other two where at least I don't know. Yeah. Middle of the water would suck.
At least you can move around in the tundra. Maybe like you can have a crack at it
until you froze and your leg cracked off.
Like instantly frozen. Yeah.
What else we got?
Jesus Crust. Always good to see you. He says, you are given a chance to go in a hyperbolic time chamber. Okay. Dragon Ball Z reference. Just pointing that out. A time chamber that gives you 10 years to perfect yourself in one sport, talent, or musical instrument of your choice. While you're in this time chamber, only 1 year passes in real life. But once you exit, you have all the skills and experiences you gained while training. Assuming you don't go crazy in those 10 years, what would you choose to become an expert in, and why? Man, that's a good question.
God damn.
Yeah.
That's got some good caveat. I like that he said it was 1 year, so you're not losing too much. But you come out and you're an expert in something. I'm trying to think what would be usable, you know, to make the 1 year or 10 years
worth it. Yeah, because 1 year is a big investment, man. 1 year of your life, like.
And if I could play the piano perfectly when I left after 10 years or whatever, it doesn't mean it would be worthwhile other than, you know,
I don't
for
think
myself,
so.
which is great. But
right.
Dude, I don't.
Tough one.
Okay. I would, the only answer I can come up with would be writing. I like writing. Sure. I think it's insanely good to do. And I think when you see talent, you can usually, you know, you're like, damn. So I would say writing, I don't think it would be useful as much as maybe 10, 15 years ago, but writing's the only answer I can come up with. Like, dude, that's a hard question. It's a hard question because he's got the caveats on there are really good limiters for that discussion. Writing. I
just think that 1 year, that's too big of an investment in a way, because you would be deprived of everything in your life and everyone.
I can live with the 1 year versus whatever you're going to learn, and would it pay off?
Would it pay off?
So the other question is, if you got to choose, would you choose not to do it? Let's ask that.
I think I would not do it.
I think it would be very difficult, even if like family members were, dude. Yeah, because it's a year. Somebody could pass away. That's actually asking quite a bit from a person.
Yes. Because even like, you know, your significant other, if you were to break it down and say like, listen,
because I'd be banging right away. The moment
it's gonna be a year. It's gonna be a full year.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah,
that's tough, man. It's a good question. Jesus,
so maybe not. It looked great in the anime, but I think not.
Yeah, things look great in animes.
They look great.
What else we got?
Green Saturn says, "Hey ACG, at what point should I take more chances in life and try to accomplish something? I feel like I've been spinning my wheels, waiting for something, but I'm not sure what anymore." Damn, that's a deep question. Take more chances. How do you view taking more chances?
The thing is chances, you can still hedge for a chance. Make yourself financially viable over here and then take a chance over here. So that's exactly what I was actually running through my brain, is like, how much of a chance are we talking about? Because there's true chances. Jumping out of an airplane, you know, without a parachute, that's a fucking chance. You know, super low one. But it's like, I mean, dude, see, these are the problems, because I always feel like it's such a sharp focus.
We also don't have the context, right?
Yeah, I would say overall what you need to do is you probably need to write down what things make you super duper happy, and can you take chances in those areas. Also, anybody who says they're grinding away is difficult for me to internalize, because I don't think I've ever like felt like I was spinning my wheels, because I like to just grab something and learn about it for no reason other than because I just like that. So grinding your wheels is hard for me to take in. But I would say, okay, no, you know what? Because this speaks to another discussion we had. First thing I would say, to look at the wherever you are situationally and realize, is it truly grinding away, or are you taking work and pleasure and mixing them together and being like, oh, I don't like work, so my entire life sucks. And I've seen that a lot. In whether you believe this or not, I'm just going to say my thought. I'm okay with a job that isn't great if it sets up my personal life to do what I want afterwards. And I do understand that we need to work, or most people need to work. So you do have to separate and go, like, you show up, you do your 8 hours, then you go home, right? And you do whatever it is that makes you happy at home, realizing that you may only have 2 days off a week for personal stuff. And if you're okay with that, there's a shit ton you can do. There's a ton.
Yes.
But if you're unhappy at work and it's completely miring you, I would say go see a therapist and see, or talk to a friend or whatever, and see if there's something you can do to make work not be such a negative. Because as somebody who's had work sit on my shoulders, it didn't my last job, but the time prior, where I would go home and entire days would pass because I would be stressed about work. You need to get that shit fixed right away, because that stuff will eat up your, we were talking about a year. I do remember, and I joke about it with QTEs, I remember a 3-year lifespan for myself where nothing other than shitty work occurred. And I remember after it got done going, I will never, ever, ever allow that to happen. Not that I won't work a shitty job, but that I won't let that sit on me forever. I need to do other stuff because it'll suck. We were talking about emotion, like getting psychically drained. A bad job, if you let it, will just continually fuck
it will make you miserable.
It'll ruin your fun outside of everything. It'll ruin all that kind of stuff. So, and taking chances, man, take chances all the time, but take chances in stuff you like.
Yes.
Like, dude, there's a ton of stuff you can take chance. I mean, what's chance really mean anymore, too?
Because it could also be like, hey, I'm going to allocate 1 hour every day to try a new skill. That's technically taking a chance. You don't know if it's going to pay off. You know, it could be, I'm going to like go to a club and try something, or I'm going to try a side gig.
Do you also believe that now when you're looking at this stuff, when everybody's not Green Saturn, I'm literally just talking about everybody, because I had a discussion with somebody who wanted to talk about shit and they kept talking about taking chances, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what I think, man? I think taking chances is ridiculously like the one-liners I hate. What does that fucking mean? Like,
let's get into the details. What do you mean?
Need to sit down and go, dude, do I need to take a chance? Or is this like an influencer somewhere where they're like, everybody can live the dream.
Take a chance, man.
I can't be a European supermodel in the current environment.
When people start talking to you about the morning routines, like the 2-hour, like put your head in the cold water thing.
When you've got Goggins out there. But no, man, you can take a chance, start learning stuff, see if you like, but embrace whatever you're having fun with. That's the first thing. Because if you start embracing some of the fun, and the also is, I got to tell you guys, man, I hear this a lot, and I'm starting to hear it even more, and it's probably because of the environment and current financial situation. But I'm hearing a lot of people thinking everybody else's life is better than theirs. And I'm not 100% sure that's a good way to think, because number one, everybody I know who's really well off, really fucking well off, still has a shit ton of problems. I always joke about, you hear somebody with a bunch of money saying, it doesn't fix problems. I'm like, well, it'd still be nice to have the money problems, having too much money or having too much time on my hands versus scraping. But at the same time, there's a lot of this and it's probably influencer and everybody having a camera, but you can tell people are starting to feel like everybody's doing something more fun than you. I can guarantee you, I used to think that. And at times, whether it be a friend or whatever, I'd be like, oh, they're probably having a good time. And then I'd seek them out and I'd be like, what are you doing? They're like, I'm sitting here. I had a friend who one time I was like, oh, they're probably doing something this weekend. They're probably having a good time. I don't want to bother I called them the next day. I was like, what are you doing? They're like, yesterday I sat on my bed and just stared at the ceiling for 8 hours. And I was like, okay.
But you don't see that on Instagram or whatever.
Because nobody's going to film that. It's not, of course. Everybody wants to tell you the best fucking version of themselves. And it's like, no, the best version of yourself still has one armpit that smells worse than the other. And that's fucking, nobody wants to admit it, dude. You're like, come on, man. Get out.
We're all just having a crack, man.
Yeah. I mean, definitely having a crack. And some people get a little bit more lucky than others, but luck is also a lot of the crack is grind. And find what you're really good at, because doesn't mean your job will replace it, but you might find something that you really enjoy. I know some people who love working at McDonald's. I have a friend who he loves it. He's been there 9 years. Loves it. Do you know why? Because he goes home and never thinks about it again until he goes back. And he does all of his shit on the side, and he's quite literally working here so that he can leave. And so you ask him, Expanse did this. You watch the Expanse TV show, right?
Yeah.
First season of the Expanse, they go to Archibald, whatever the fucking main character's name is, and the guy tries to give him a raise. And he's like, whoa, I don't want a raise. I don't want extra responsibility. I'm exactly happy with where I am right fucking now. What are you doing? And the guy mistook what was basically a person who didn't care as a person who wanted leadership, which happens all the fucking time. You will see that a lot.
Not everybody wants that next level.
Some people just want to cruise and they're happy with it. You got to find sort of your cruising altitude, and from there, I think energy comes. If I'm cruising,
what is your tempo? What is your
when I get? I mean, I'm sure if you were here with me, you would fucking hate me because of my energy level. But then you have positives, like you go to sleep at a better time, which sounds, some people might be, oh, that's a big deal. It's a massive deal that you're able to do that. So there's a bunch of skills that you can sort of, I would say, build into something on the side that makes you happy. The grind away thing, man, don't get ground away. Find friends, talk to them about stuff. It's hard to, I would say a lot of people need friends or therapists too. And I don't mean therapy I think in also the normal way. I just mean friends and like a group to talk to, which we all feel disconnected sometimes.
Yeah, no, we need that. And I think also the idea of grinding towards something is attractive, but be careful to not negotiate or like compromise your day-to-day to that vision. So you may think you're grinding for something, and that can be good, but it shouldn't come at the cost of your day-to-day being miserable. So if you're saying, I'm grinding away for, a few years now so that I'm going to be better off later, really watch out and look at the equation you have there, because you have then several years of being pretty miserable.
Yeah.
And I personally have made choices and prefer having a much clearer separation of like, okay, work ends here. I have my time to do the things that drive me and that I want to do.
I'll tell you a sad story, not involving somebody that I'll say their name. They were about 25 and they were telling me about how they were going to save up and they were going to go really lean money wise. They were going to save up and they wanted, I think, $2 million in the bank, and they were getting paid quite well. Him and his wife, they got married and they were both of this thought. They got 4 years, he died. And she was left with 4 years to where they had scrimped and not done any pleasurable activities other than knowing each other. They were great partners. But it was 10 years later when I talked to her, she randomly just blurted out she felt like they had made a massive mistake. She was like, not only they weren't that kind of people anyway, they had to alter some things. They weren't unhappy. It was just that their plan was for something in the future, and they decided to shrink up their personal life during that time. Instead of being somewhat happy, they were like, okay, let's shrink this shit to the point to where we know we're going to be fine. I think they were talking about retirement and all this stuff. And I remember when they told me, going, how do you know? We all think we'll live forever, which is probably what was going on. And they thought they'd be together forever. And then I don't want to talk about that one, but another friend had some loss that occurred randomly, as random as you could ever describe.
You just never know.
And afterwards, I realized when he was describing it that he felt a great deal of loss, that they didn't just do stuff because they were waiting to do stuff. And it's like, dude, that shit could fucking die out tomorrow. Like you gotta take care of yourself a little bit today. Let's move on to something happier. We got anything happy? I got some happy stuff. And I know you got to probably pee. It's 3 minutes. I can keep this up if you want to go and pee.
I probably gotta go, in a bit. Phil Strider says, what's the game that you consider a reset game? You're having a muddy day, things aren't really going all that great, work's being a bother. The only thing that can bring you back to baseline is insert game here. I like it. It's a positive.
Division 2, probably. It's fun to just sit back and shoot some
always,
guys.
Always hits the spot.
For sure. Yep. I love it.
Yeah, he said World of Warcraft.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting.
Dude, and
It's a good one.
It's another whole world that you can explore. Like if you are grinding, like we were talking about with the other guy, like that might be the outlet. And there's something about familiarity, right? For sure in a game like that. What's yours?
I don't know if I have one. I mean, SnowRunner was that, and
SnowRunner's a really good example, though. SnowRunner's an awesome example.
It makes me really kind of relaxed and stuff.
Some of the
I don't know
answers
if I have just one.
Are D4, Diablo 4, I just got into Batman Free Flow. I don't know what that means. And then Lippy says Power Wash Simulator. I think the sim games,
that was a good one too.
Yeah. Doing work other people have to do is awesome in a game.
Dude,
I don't care what anybody says.
I remember PC Building Simulator. I went on a bender playing that game too, and that was in the zone. Yeah.
Yep.
Last question from Sully. He says, been playing Roadcraft and loving it. I'm an operator for local 478 IUOE.
No shit. That's
I don't know what that is.
That's cool, man. That's what I believe. That's one of the unions, the construction.
Oh,
like construction company union.
Okay.
What were you gonna say?
He says, so it's fun running machines virtually that I run in real life too. For my question, does anyone remember an old PC game called Close Combat: A Bridge Too Far?
A Bridge Too Far.
It was one of the first PC games I ever played, and I saw someone post pictures of it on social media the other day, and it was extremely nostalgic. Just wondering if anyone else had played it.
Yep, I've played that one. That was a long time ago, man. He's got to be, unless he got into it, dude, that's like 20 years ago, man.
Damn.
Yeah, that's crazy. Colin Bright says I hit 2,500 hours in Division 2.
Damn.
It's crazy.
Nice.
You have to go pee while I read the rest of these, or you can go and I can
I'm okay for now. I'm powering through.
Let me get through these. Do you have a moment? Because I also want to talk about something science-wise that I thought was really cool. With Microsoft's recent strategy of releasing former Xbox exclusives like Hellblade 2 and Gears of War Reloaded on PlayStation, is the old style of concept or style of console exclusivity becoming obsolete? How might this shift impact a future game development platform? Dude, exclusivity is not obsolete. It will probably never be, right? It's just that the majority of it won't be, but it'll never go obsolete. I think there'll always be. I mean, there's exclusive stuff for a Samsung tablet, so there'll always be exclusivity, but I get the general gist. I think it has changed dramatically, but
it is opening up, but like some stuff just will remain closed, right? Nintendo just, that's the way they do
dogmatic.
things.
They'll that's a good point. Nintendo, unless it's a mobile device,
you're not going to see, the next Pokemon coming out on literally every platform.
Like, can you imagine a new Mario 128 being on the Xbox and PlayStation? I not only can I not imagine it, I just don't even go there in my thinking, which would be great if it happened, but I don't.
Yeah.
What else we got?
No, that's all we got in the Discord.
So,
today.
dude, I've been I ate up her book. It was really good. Sarah Walker, who does assembly and complexity theory, chemist, started out as an astrobiologist and is now working on chemical and basically the idea of assembly theory, which is that if you look around the universe and you look at how many steps something takes to come from its primordial atom to whatever it is, you can identify or become easier to identify if something is created by artificial life, or not artificial, but life, because there's certain chemicals that you can see that aren't created naturally on a planet because of just how those things are constructed. And I was reading about assembly theory and dude, I gotta say, what I like about the theory and the discussion is that it really doesn't change much at all. It quite literally just offers a framework of understanding that a circuit board is not going to randomly assemble itself, right? And then you start looking down from there, and they have there's a bunch of good papers from Sarah and Lee. I'm going to say his last name.
Yeah,
wrong.
I've heard him talking.
Yeah.
He was on the
Joe Rogan, Lex.
He was. I heard him on Lex.
Dude, the great thing about DC says Sarah Walker. So what's she doing after Chuck?
Yeah.
Dude, by the way, anybody who hasn't seen Chuck, great show. But no, a fantastic. It's awesome. It's an awesome framework for understanding almost anything and just discussing things. But it's funny because Lee I've listened to a ton of times, and nothing against him. May just be the way he describes things. It may be that Sarah needed to come in because she had experience somewhere else, which I think we've seen that. For example, if it was just a podcast with me, wouldn't be near as fun. You get a bunch of people in, everything changes, people bounce off each other. That's exactly what it seems like with Sarah and with him. And so I was reading some of their like back and forth, the way they talk, the way they discuss science, the way they discuss. She's got some hard, she'll say some stuff that I think is sort of off the wall, but overall it's fantastic. If nobody's read her, she's actually very well spoken, to the point to where I think Rogan just stopped asking questions and let her go. And then, because it was like, it's not only could Joe not keep up, he didn't even know what questions to ask. So he would start talking about monkeys or something, because that's Joe.
Okay.
And then Lex had more questions, but very, very cool discussion. I know you get a chance to read, science books and stuff like that. If you get a chance, you should check out her stuff. Really, really cool discussion that she had. And the back and forth between them and then, other astrobiologists. Some people are like, oh, that's all it is compression theory, which is,
is it Life as No One Knows It? The book?
Sarah Emery Walker. She's got a middle name.
Sarah Walker.
Sarah
Emery Walker. Life as No One Knows It.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very, very cool. And some of it involves some of it involves complexity theory, but what I like about her is she's one of the few people that can talk for a great deal of time and say 15 words you don't know, which is, to me, the greatest experience of my life.
It's insane.
It's why I liked Altered Carbon from Richard Morgan, because the way he used words, and it's weird. She actually discussed it in the podcast. She was saying she purposely will slightly adjust words in Twitter on a tweet, because she is like, we're talking about things that don't fit in the current paradigm of thinking. So she'll sometimes use the elastic version of a word, something that you're like, I don't know if that's exactly the way you use that, but she's discussing things that don't necessarily fit. And dude, there was a discussion she did that I swear to God, I was every 5 minutes, I was like, what does she mean? And I have to look, and that to me is, it was awesome. Like, I've ate up all of her stuff. Insanely eloquent speaker for somebody talking about things that aren't just hers. She'll talk about science in 1 second. And when you get somebody who doesn't drop to basics, which we all do, where at some point you're like, well, I think there's a backo, because that's, your brain has no words to use because it's outside of your bailiwick. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what they were talking about. She would and it was all eloquent. And you're like, damn. And then she would get lost in a thought and be all, what? Because she is conceptually thinking about a lot of stuff. She'll just go off on a tangent, and she's one of the few people I've ever heard who never feels disrespectful. She will go for 5 minutes and go, what was the question? And Joe one time is like, I have no clue. I just really enjoyed what you were saying. Like, because she was off in her brain. She was like, well, if you do that, and dude, very cool, insanely good, just well-spoken and really good book. Absolutely worth reading. Do you have any suggestions?
I'll check out the book. I saw that she was on the podcast that I watched with Lee Cronin, so it was both of them with Lex.
Do you feel
like 3 years ago?
Hey, what's up, Oregon? It looks like he's watched her too. Do you feel like with Lee has an accent, and it may be that, you know how sometimes you'll hear somebody has an accent and they're either considered the bad guy in Star Wars because they're an English accent, it's like, and you're like, okay, that's a bad guy. There's something about his that doesn't, this is nothing against him, obviously hyper intelligent, but there was something about the way he talked to where I was like, I get what you're talking about, but I'm not saying I disbelieved it, because it's not really a belief thing, but it was like, okay, whatever. Then she talked. I can't describe. It's very interesting to look at linguistics and accents and preconceived notions of the way somebody talks and what they're trying to say. Yeah, dude, fantastic. Yeah, that was awesome.
It's also a topic that I'm so out of my depth that I'm struggling to keep up with what either of them were saying.
Yeah,
so,
but it is,
to some extent, it's just also my own.
But it's, I don't know about you. When Green Saturn was talking about grinding, that's what causes me to sit up at night for 5 hours, even though I know I should be asleep, and I'll be like, whoa, is she on an, and then I found the other guy who was talking about emergent gravity, because she was talking about emergent gravity. So I was like, well, check him out. Harder to parse. Definitely not, hasn't either thought those out or is still on the edge of putting a theory together. But his description of compression and stuff, I was like, okay, that's very interesting. But I love to be able to parse it through her, because she just has a very cool way of being able to talk without, there's no real pauses. And that kind of thing to me in a podcast, when somebody's thinking for a great deal of time, I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
I think that's just us where you tune out. But
that's insane. Yeah.
Oh man, eloquent speakers. It's a sexy. This is not talking about her, anybody, but it's just the word I use. Charismatic, whatever.
It is like something compelling. It's just universally compelling.
So fucking good.
Yeah.
It's so good when somebody is able
Incredible.
and when it's not just words, but you're like, okay, I get what this person's saying. And they thought this through. Like, they were asking her questions that I thought were off the wall. I was like, there's no way she's thought about that. And she's like, well, if you look at by the time the 15 minutes were up, I'm like, God damn, she had thought about that. Yeah.
But you know what's crazy too? Like, we still don't understand how life starts.
Yeah.
Even after all this great work, right, that they are doing with assembly theory, and like we actually don't understand what chain of events would be necessary for it to take place in other planets or anything like that.
The other
we know some of the conditions, right?
We know some of the conditions, but the one that I am studying right now they didn't use this comparison, but I will, that especially when they were talking about going down to Planck length in the universe and stuff, like how small can you go, or going to atoms. Yeah. One of the really cool sort of ideas is that technically a lot of the stuff that we see or look at is like a network. It's almost like a router on a network in a house. And you see the router and you're like, that's the number. That's the thing. That's whatever. But until you get an instrument to read what's beyond it, it makes sense anyway, which is one of the things she was trying to describe, is there's nothing wrong with saying that makes sense. Like, it does make sense, and you can still route. You could literally see the entire network and be like, boom, this atoms makes sense. Quarks makes sense. Spin makes sense.
Yeah.
But then what they were describing is the idea that behind that, there is other stuff. It's just until the instruments are there or what have you, you aren't able to see it, including quantum theory. And is it possible that like what we see is something ending somewhere? This is what this guy starts talking about, open and ended strings, which is string theory, which I'm not a whatever. But it was cool for him because he was talking about something, and then she was actually talking about the idea why we would see string theory when it wouldn't have to be that. And I was like, oh, I get it now. Because, sometimes you hear about like a theory becoming less important or less embraced. And it was awesome because she was like, well, if it makes sense to that point, that doesn't mean, like, it could actually still be connected to everything where it appears as a point, or it appears as a string, or it appears as this. And that is absolutely acceptable, that if we are not able to go farther than that, nothing wrong with it.
Yep.
That was the other thing I thought was awesome. She was like, well, we'll continue to look, but it is completely possible. And it's okay to say, your theory makes sense, even though it may not be structurally right whatsoever.
Yeah.
But at this level, everything is testable, and it pans out to that, because you're at the network router level. You're not at the and that's fine. And I was like, oh shit, man, that was a good way for her to describe it. That
makes a lot of sense, right? Because it's how emergence works. So we can talk about concepts in terms of human agents, but when you break it down, we're like atoms, or like you say, go down even further, we're quarks, whatever it may be. Maybe there isn't a description at the quark level that represents what it feels to be human, or like to feel an emotion. But we can talk about those at our level of emergence, and that's completely consistent with everything under it. It's just that it's different levels, right? And the question is, have we gotten to the foundational level,
right,
which we can't break stuff any further, being the quarks or whatever? Or is there another layer, which is maybe the strings and whatever it may be? We actually don't know, right? But
honestly, let's say I make you a planet before you piss yourself. Let me ask you one last question. I make you a planet and no asteroids, no nothing. You got a planet and it's got photosynthesis. It's right where it needs to be for our version of life. Do you think life pops up?
I think so. I think my choice out of all the possibilities is that life is actually fairly easy to occur. It's just that it's also equally easy to extinguish, like something will go wrong, or that's kind of my internal
interpretation
hypothesis. It's all like Bayesian thinking. So we assign probabilities to these different things, and like if you think about it, out of all these possibilities where like life is super hard that never happens or whatever, for me, I think the one that's most probable based on what I've seen and stuff is that life is actually happens if the right conditions are met, and those seem to be pretty well known, more or less. And I just think that it's a numbers game. You know, if you have enough of those worlds that have the right conditions, a good number of occurrences will happen where life comes up. Then the question is, does it actually thrive? Is it able to, evolve?
There's a very cool hard sci-fi book, and if I knew the name, I'd tell you, but it covered the idea that technically everything on our Earth, chirality in particular, we see from even though we think something is unique, whatever we see is all based on the idea that technically viruses most likely are one of the major things that cause life to occur. And the idea that, especially as viruses work and compression and assembly theory work, the idea that technically life on another planet, there's no reason it would look anything like ours, especially if it's based on something that does not involve, DNA, does not involve that. And like when you grow up, you're always told like, oh, this is where the data is. This is where blah, blah, blah is. And they're like, no, that's only that way, because if you track back, it looks like there's a possibility that viruses and movement of DNA, snippets of information get self-assembled over a particular time, and boom, something happens, versus some other thing where you have crystal monsters walking around.
Right.
Or whatever it may be. But very, very cool stuff. Honestly, Terrence Howard figured it all out. Yeah, I listened to a little Terrence Howard. That dude needs some meds ASAP. The peopling of the universe was one of the craziest. I mean, I was just sitting there going like, damn, okay, that guy's smoking all of Joe's weed. He got into ayahuasca. Him and Ron White did way too much. Do we have anything else before we wrap it up?
That's it for me.
That's it for me too. I want to thank everybody who got here. If you get a chance when we finish this up, if you could go thumbs it up, leave a comment, I would appreciate it. It does help people jumping in and seeing the podcast. Next week, I got to look at NDAs. I don't know. I think I have one next week, but I will try to do a patron podcast as well this weekend. We'll see. And are you streaming anything tomorrow?
I think I'll be streaming some either League or Roadcraft.
League
That's
or
the plan,
Roadcraft.
at
So
least.
either really terrible game, really good game. And I'm not going to say which is which, because it could be either. Assembly theory, it could be either. Don't.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. We've been doing the combo, which is like we play a bit of League, which is like high intensity, and then we do Roadcraft, which is chill and.
You're playing Roadcraft wrong. My version of Roadcraft is not chill. My version of Roadcraft is smashing cars with the dump truck and fucking,
oh my god!
Yeah, dude, man. Did you know in Roadcraft also, real quick, if you have a ravine, man, I talked about this in the review, but I don't know if you caught it. If you have a ravine, you can fill that thing with like pipes, and then you have to use less sand, and then you make a road. Just saying.
No.
Just saying. Life hacks.
I didn't catch that. Okay, I'll have to try that.
All right, everybody else, have a good one. Enjoy yourselves. Peace out, and enjoy your weekend if you have something good planned.